Regular meeting of the Planning Board of the Village of Dobbs Ferry, today being Thursday, April 2nd, first Thursday of the month. We have 5 items on the agenda and 1 item we'll discuss upon completion. The first, I'd like to make a motion, we open the public hearing. Do I hear a second?
Public hearing or meeting?
Meeting, public meeting.
Second.
Public hearing, public meeting. Good. Second, first, second, all those in favor? Good, okay. As I said, we have 5 items. The first one is adopting the minutes of March 12. I got them in the email this morning. The rest are here in front of us. I read through it, saw no comments. Do I hear any comments at all?
No comment.
No comments? Rob? No. No comments. I move that the minutes be accepted as written.
Second.
All those in favor? Done. Next item on the agenda is this is a public hearing for site plan recommendations by the Board of Trustees to propose construction of a 4-floor addition and reorganization of the existing units in the building for property located at 100 Main. And to speak for this is Mr. Steinschneider. Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Right up front? Are there any variances required for this?
There aren't any variances required if we do it one way. If we were to do it as 2 separated buildings, which is how we've shown it, at that point, this board would have the authority under the conditions of site plan to modify those requirements to allow it. We have prepared plans for a joined building, which would not need any variances. We've changed the parking that would go with that, so we'd be in full compliance with everything. But those drawings have not yet been sent to you. Not only have those drawings not been sent to you, which is a good reason not to be finalizing anything tonight, we also are still working on the scenic and natural resources report, which is going to be addressing things like the historical significance of the barn. So that still needs to be submitted to the board.
The reason I asked the
Yeah.
question is simply that if there are variances required,
Right.
I'd rather not open the public hearing until the variances go through the zoning board.
That's up to you. It
Because
really doesn't make a difference to us if you
it-
open the public hearing tonight or just hear it still informally tonight, and then you open the public hearing if it has to go.
I'll listen
Yeah.
to comments, but to open a public hearing where you have to go to the zoning board may be an academic exercise for us to go through. So
Yeah,
in as much as what you're presenting or what you have been given, what you have given to the village,
Would not require a variance.
what the village has, the documents do not require a variance.
What we've submitted does not require a variance. What we submitted would require the planning board to modify its, the way that the site is developed as it's empowered to do.
Yeah, no, but
If
it
you-
would
we
not
can't-
require a variance. That's your point.
Right, because you've got the powers to do that internally. We have the ability, as the code empowers us, we have the ability to have a 100% compliant project. We haven't proposed that because we think one larger building would be less attractive than keeping it as 2 individual buildings.
Well,
But that's something you have to decide.
let me confirm, Dwight, what has been submitted, is that enough for us to go ahead without requiring a zoning board approval?
I think what Patty is trying to say is that you have the option, you have certain broad powers, actually, it's recommended powers to the Board of Trustees to waive certain criteria. I think that's what he's saying. Or the application can be sent to the zoning board, because there's two items that do not comply with the standards set up in the zoning ordinance. So it's at your discretion, and one of them, which is in effect something akin to a use variance, as the apartment complexes with the 2 buildings don't quite meet the criteria for apartment complex, in that one of the buildings has only 2 units in it. And that type of item would normally, in my experience, would be sent to the Zoning Board of Appeals and not try to be dealt with at this level. I think the parking issue is one in which a waiver from you is as valid as a good way to go in some cases. If the parking organization makes sense and it needs a minor waiver, and you have that power, which you do in the downtown, then I think that would be, that's something you could consider. But I wouldn't recommend the question of, does this qualify as an apartment complex, to be determined at this board. I would send that on to the ZBA.
Well, my basic question is, if we proceed, and I open the public hearing, can we work with this, or does it require the applicant to go to the zoning board?
Chairman, can I ask a question of the applicant? There's two issues you have. Number one is that the front building only has 2 units as opposed to requiring 3. That's issue number one.
Correct.
Issue number 2 is that your parking is too close to the property line.
As
right?
drawn.
As drawn. So let's start with issue number 2. Why do you think the planning board can waive that?
Because we can have the parking, the 10 feet from the property line.
Are you saying that's a site plan issue? They could
We
not
said-
waive it, the way the site plan is
Right, we're
organized,
relying-
you could make it so it's not 10 feet.
Correct.
So
Okay.
it would comply
So
without,
then you're saying you could go, okay, now the second, going back to the first issue, the use issue.
We have made, our application requested an addition of a story on the front building,
Okay,
which would have added 2 additional units.
okay.
So we would have a total of 4 units in the front building instead of 2. When we appeared before this board in November, at that board, we were encouraged to drop the addition of the 4th story on the front building and to concentrate on the back building, which we did.
Okay,
We,
but
we
you-
still
you-
have
you-
the application that includes the 4th story on the front, which is 100% compliant with code. And that would give you more than 3 or more units in the front building.
as long as you get more than, up to 3. Minimum is 3.
Minimum is 3 if it is 2 separated buildings.
I
If
understand.
we have a air-conditioned, heated space, I don't know about air-conditioned, but heated space that connects between the 2 buildings, it is then 1 building, and none of this comes into play.
Why don't you do this, since you haven't decided which plan you want to go with?
We thought, and I can understand if I misunderstood recommendations that were given to me by the board. My understanding was keeping it as 2 smaller structures was desirable, but if I think there were comments at the last meeting about what happens if we move everything into the front building and have 1 larger structure. We've taken a step towards that. We haven't completely gone to the point of where we would be totally renovating the front building and ending up with a 4-story structure that's the same dimension as our 2 buildings except filled in the middle, which is certainly possible to do. Right now, what we're proposing is the front building remains unchanged, and we build a new 2-story structure or 2.5-story structure, depending on how the roof is handled, because, again, fully within the purview of this board, it's either 2 or 2.5 stories above the parking level. So if this board said, we like the idea of the 2 buildings, this board has the power under 352E to approve, or to recommend approval of that, and of course, it goes to the Board of Trustees.
Sorry. I think this all ties back, of course, to parking to some extent. As you add more units to the front, you're more deficient in parking.
We would become deficient in parking because we really can't fit more than 6. I mean, we can kind of fit 7, but 6 works
Right,
better.
1 more unit.
At that point, we would have to see whether this board would feel comfortable using the code, where it empowers the village to allow the use of on-street parking to meet some of that requirement. So far, I don't think that's been granted to
No.
any of the projects, but it still is in the code, it could be used. And there's also the payment in lieu of parking.
Yeah.
When we started this, we were proposing no parking on site. We were proposing that it was a 3-story building in the back with 6 units, an additional floor in the front, and breaking the duplexes into singles, so 6 in the front, and the idea that all of the parking would be using the parking lot behind Village Hall. Because in many ways, that's
With the payment,
with the payment, which would, at that point, be a fairly substantial amount of money of about $180,000, which could go a long way towards the engineering studies necessary to see if that's viable. But I don't think the village is ready to make a commitment to that, and I think this board, members of this board have been relatively eloquent that until the village is ready to make a commitment to creating that parking, it's a little bit risky to be doing the payments in lieu of parking.
Well, let's stick to the issue, though. The issue
Yeah.
here is you have 2 potential issues. Now, you said you don't care, whether the public hearing is open now, because you need to decide which way you want to go.
I need guidance from this board
Right.
to know whether to modify our application.
My problem with opening the public hearing is that you should not do that if the variances are required.
That's why I started the
So
first
you
question.
shouldn't be handling application. So you should probably not open it tonight until there's a final way you think
I'd
you
like
want
to
to go.
continue then the pre-submission,
Fine.
and then at this,
Yeah.
and then make your presentation, explain what the issues are.
Yeah,
At the pre-submission, we can have the public speak. It's
Sure.
not a public hearing, but
Yeah.
to get input. We've gotten a lot of emails and a lot of letters pertaining to this property.
really.
Really,
And
yes.
you'll have to renotice it again if you move to the public hearing,
Why would I need to renotice?
because we're not opening it here.
Okay.
Okay,
Very
so
Okay.
expensive.
Sorry.
Can I, sorry, I'm going to go back to Ed's original. Is there, on the table or in your office or whatever, a as-of-right design,
Yes.
which is the other one that we haven't seen?
Well, one of the questions, because we've got a lot of moving pieces here.
Right.
If we do one of the things that one of our drawings is showing, which is moving the building to 10 feet away from the aqueduct, we then do not have the parking under the building, which means that the 10-foot setback could be from the rear yard, which is one of the requirements, would then apply because we would have open parking. If we enclose that, then we don't have a problem with the location of the parking. We're willing to enclose it, but what we start is down a slope of increasing the amount of what gets built, which we've seen on other projects can lead us into a situation where people are saying, well, this is now getting very big. So if the goal is to keep it looking, right now, we've got a 4-unit house that's a little bit bigger, a little bit shorter, a little bit wider than the two-family houses that are up the street. So we're, in terms of scale of house, we're about, and there are two different roof lines. There's the first roof line we showed in November, which was a low-pitched roof, that this board said, isn't there something you could do that would make the roof a little bit more of an animated piece, more barn-like was the word that was used. And we came up with one that we thought worked fairly well with that, with the jerkin head roof and the dormers. If the board says, now that we've seen it, we've changed our mind, we'd rather not have the attic space, we'd rather drop that down, we've got that already on our drawings. We can show you that tonight in
We can do
SketchUp.
that in pre-submission.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think what we should do is, in fact, I don't know if there's any reason to start with the PowerPoint. It might make more sense to go to the SketchUp model and talk about these specifics of, the fact that there are these two different ways to do the
If you
roof.
could do that and explain, but, okay, so we're not, even though it says here, the notice is that this is a public hearing, we will continue the pre-submission. And at this point, if you could carefully, I mean, you've been alluding to it, but go through the two options that you're presenting.
Okay.
And explain
Well,
those two.
Then I should go to the PowerPoint first. Let's do the PowerPoint first.
And I will afterward take comments from the audience.
This, just in memory for everyone, this is where we started with this, which is when we had the low-pitched roof. On the front, we had the parking underneath, we had 2 stories and a low-pitched roof with no attic space that was usable. So we started with that, people felt that this looked, I mean, I don't know why it would look wrong, it's actually very similar to the front roof. Roof on the front building, the other buildings, but that's, just as memory, that's where we started. We went to the larger pitch with the dormers in response to the idea that it was a request to make it a bit more interesting. This is how we had evolved it out. The buildings have always connected. We had a meeting with Brian and Ed yesterday, or I think it was yesterday, talking about whether connection with structure was sufficient to have it be considered a single building. I know in New York State code it says that, but that doesn't mean that the Village of Ballestrate can't interpret it differently. So what we were told yesterday is it would have to be conditioned space connecting the two. So if we enclose this coming across and make that all one building, then we don't have to then we're fully compliant with this being a single building on the site. And
You're
there's
saying
nowhere-
fill the space in here?
Yeah. If we, I mean, that's why I'm saying I think you want to be careful, since you have the power to say, we like this better, if you did. You might not want to say, how do we make this be as compliant with the code as we possibly can? Since you, under 352E, you have the ability to say, we're modifying that because we think it's in the interest of good planning. You could say, we prefer the feeling that this breaks the scale down, we don't want to see it all unified into one structure. But that's a decision that you guys will make, and it won't be tonight, I'm sure. These were just follow-ups to that. Now, what we've done here, this is a different site plan than what we had before. What we've done here is we've moved this building further away from the aqueduct. So we have 10 feet of separation to the aqueduct. We have not enclosed the parking. If we wanted to have 100% compliant with code, what we would do is we would build a wall in front of the aqueduct's retaining wall, which we do not recommend doing, and we would cover that, at which point we would be fully compliant with the positioning of the parking.
How the height of that wall would be?
It could be 9 feet high.
And so the cars would be beneath that 9
It would be
foot?
fully enclosed, and what we got to with 6668 was the idea that we would locate the parking adjacent to the aqueduct, but we would move the building back, and that's how that project was approved. When we went to the Architectural Review Board, the Architectural Review Board insisted that we enclose it. So. that-
Enclose the parking?
Yes, so that's what was eventually done. So the parking, we've increased, we've moved the building over. We have 10 feet from the property line to the parking spaces.
Again, just to clarify, the aqueduct, where am I? Here I am.
Right there.
Okay, the aqueduct is right along here.
Yep,
And how high is the walking area of the aqueduct, the path?
the path here is about 6 feet above the parking level here.
Above grade, above the parking?
So if we leveled this, right now you've got the
No,
barn
I'm
here.
talking about the area that you mentioned a moment ago where you're gonna put up a 9-foot wall.
Right, this is 6 feet below the aqueduct grade.
The grade there is 6
So if you
feet.
put up a 9-foot wall along here, it would be 3 feet high along the aqueduct side.
Okay.
It still, I think, would elicit objection, because if this building were to come down, you'll see the aqueduct's retaining. And it's one of the things that came up at 6668 as being a desirable thing to see that the retaining walls of the aqueduct were part of the idea too. So you don't conceal them if you have another way of doing it. So the parking's been moved, the requisite distance off. What this required us to do is to rotate the stairs, so that instead of the stairs coming out this way, it would be that way on the building, but it still works fine. And we've actually shown that we can make the connection over to this, so it could all be a connected structure. We wouldn't have to bring it along here. We could still have a courtyard area here and a courtyard area back behind to make the connection across in there. So you'd have a conditioned space connecting the building, so you'd be able to walk from one building to the other without going outside. This is, with that change, here's the aqueduct wall, here's where you'd see the parking, this is the parking level, the first floor and second floor, this is the attic space. When we get to the SketchUp, we can show you that without the attic space being habitable. It makes a significant difference in the height, although this is the 50-foot line, and in fact here, we're still not exceeding 50 feet. So, you know, in terms of what the numbers are, and I understand numbers are not what are gonna drive anyone's opinion, the numbers on this all work. But that doesn't mean people don't feel that it's too tall. So there's a way to make this less by eliminating the attic, and you still get 4 good units. Actually, here, this was where we originally were proposing putting the 4th floor on the front building. So you'd have the retail, 1, 2, and 3 floors of residential.
And that would make it comply with,
If they're separate structures, but if they're separate structures, it just eliminates one of the variances that would be necessary. We would still need a variance for the interpretation. I don't agree with it, but I'll respect it. The interpretation is that you can only have one primary building. And if you have 2 buildings on the property, there's a primary and an accessory. and you cannot have residential units in an accessory structure. So that means that the only way to have two buildings on a site, although we have many, we don't have many, we have several conditions in the downtown that have that. It was also pointed out to me yesterday that those were built 100 years ago, so they weren't under our current zoning.
I was on the board then.
So that takes us up through all this stuff. This goes through all the photos. I don't know if you need any of the photos. Maybe the
Let
only,
me ask you, whether the top floor on the back building that you propose, is that have habitable space by a
the attic
residence?
space, yes.
It'll be a residence.
It would be the second floor of the units on the second floor. The two units on the second floor would have a staircase, and they would have two rooms under the attic in the dormers.
Oh, okay, so that the bedroom areas would be,
Right. So you'd have nicer units, but you don't need that to have those be units. You still have an 860 square foot unit without using the
And that
attic.
would lower it probably 10 feet if you take that out?
It's not quite that. It probably lowers it about 6 feet. But I mean, it's more than just the 6 feet. It's not just the number. It completely changes the way the roof looks. It's a much flatter roof. You don't have the dormers, you're not bringing that energy to it. So it's a different look, but as I said, I think it'll be better to look at that in the SketchUp. We did get, Steve was nice enough to help with providing a kind of frame for what he was projecting of, because views are gonna come up in this. We are doing the natural resources and scenic. So we took this, what we did is we showed how the building we're proposing actually fits within that frame. It's, Steve's fairly accurate with what the height would be. What you're doing is you'd be losing this. The only challenge with this photo is that I think it has to be a telephoto lens, and you're standing up pretty high unless you're over on Oak Street. But it's a great view. We did the same with this one, where, that fits in. We don't go as far over as it was projected, but I don't think that really makes a difference. And these are, of course, with this floor. If you imagine not having the attic and the dormers, and that the height of this is here, it's much more consistent with the two-family houses that are up the street on Elm Street. But I don't know, is there any interest here of going into any of the photos? You guys know this village better than I do.
I believe we do.
Yeah, these are the houses up the street, 2 stories. They're not quite as tall because you get the ramp down, but the difference in the height is, how much of a difference that is of getting the ramp down. So these are probably 2 to 3 feet shorter than what that is, but again, fully compliant, and these are not in the DB zoning district.
Hey, can you provide this slideshow to Brian, please, Tim?
Oh, you mean give them copies? They've got it on their machine.
Good.
Yeah,
Okay.
did you
You
say
do not have to delete this when I'm done.
Patty, did you say you have another scheme also?
Well, I just-
Or the previous one was the second, those are the two?
Yeah, well, the one where we moved the building further from the aqueduct, closer to the front building, and then attached the 2 buildings, we showed that in the floor plan, the site plan. We'd need to develop that further if that's the direction.
But the SketchUp model that we were just looking at,
I don't have,
That's
well, the
which-
SketchUp
that's-
model I have, those weren't that. We can spin around. I don't have that shifted over, but you'll be able to tell this issue from those. And if you guys say we want to see
okay,
that,
but the simulations we were just looking at, that's of the current, that's of what's
That's
being
the current one.
proposed, okay.
yeah. So can we go to the SketchUp, or do you want to see some of these photos?
No, go to the SketchUp.
Well,
Hey, how many spaces are proposed in these plans?
parking,
Yeah.
we propose 6.
And how many would be needed?
If we have the plan that we have now with the 2 in the front and 4 in the back, 6.
Okay, and what if you,
6 units.
if you add a unit?
Not
Not,
including street parking.
Assuming
Not including street parking. You're required, there's no requirement for the stores for their parking. We're required 1 parking space per residential unit.
Yes,
So if we have 6 units, we
Six
need
cars.
6 parking spaces. We've provided 6 parking spaces.
These are all, isn't it one per additional bedroom?
No, that's only if you're not a mixed-use building. If you're a mixed-use building, it's 1 space. I'll defer to when Brian comes back. Unless, wait, are you up on that?
so you are a mixed,
But the back building's not.
So you have 6 total units,
6 total
residential
units,
units
And
plus.
6 spots.
6 parking spots.
So let me look at it, hold on. Mixed-use dwelling requires one space per dwelling unit, that would be your 6. And you're interpreting you don't need to add anything for the retail space?
No, that's existing space, and the code earlier specifically stipulates that existing retail space does not require parking.
Hold please.
Existing retail.
Right, and that is. We're not, at this point, we wouldn't be touching the front building.
Gotcha.
What size, how many bedrooms in those back units?
They would all be set up as either a small 2 or a generous 1.
What's the difference in a small 2 and a generous 2?
No, generous 1.
Generous
If
1,
I've got 20 feet of width to the unit,
that's called
I can
generous?
put 2 bedrooms side by side on the back. So you can get a 2-bedroom unit to fit in that. I'm not sure if that's as good in terms of what market we're looking at than if we had a more generous 1-bedroom that maybe has like a little den area or something like that. That might actually bring a better rental.
But you don't, that does not preclude someone from coming in and putting a partition up, making a less generous 1 and a 2.
Into a 2, right. But there's no difference in parking between the one
Okay,
and
no, just that I'm not familiar with the word generous 1.
Well, if I had a bedroom that's 20 feet wide by, say, 15, it would be a generous bedroom. If I divided that into 2 10-foot by 15 bedrooms, they would be smaller.
I'm learning all about the real estate business.
I wish I knew it. Okay, this is the scheme with the attic space, which I'm just gonna kind of spin you around quickly on it. This basically shows how the space feels between the buildings, where you've got the ability to see through, you don't feel like it's a solid wall coming across, which I think there's some, positives to that. But that's an opinion, and other people could say they feel differently. Just so you're aware of it, we're showing shadows on all of these. This is June at 4 p.m. So this is the solstice in June. I've also got the December and the equinox, so we can compare, what those are. I did 4 o'clock for all of them because that was the greatest shadow that we put on the street. Okay, so if we look at this, and if I figure out how to move this thing down. Okay, so just take this, and if I make actually, it's gonna change position. So, this is the lower pitched roof. If we did this, so we did not have the attic space above. So you can tell that it takes a lot of height out of the appearance of the building. That attic space with the dormers definitely makes it, look like it's a taller building. I think it's a nicer building, but again, that's my opinion. You don't have to have that to make it work, and it's not a matter of the board giving anything special because that is a totally legal space to have. In fact, it doesn't have to be an attic space. It could simply be a 3rd floor on the building. So this is looking at that one. I don't know if there's any value to it, but I might as well. This is without having anything there other than the barn structure. The reason that might be worth taking a look at is just the reality that if I'm down here and I'm looking, if I'm on the aqueduct level and I'm looking, I can see that the barn structure itself right now makes any view towards the river unviable. The main difference that happens between what's there now and if we build something, we're going to affect more the sky view.
Height.
The height will block more of the sky, and there are 2 views that'll actually be, directly affected to a small degree. It's not dramatic, but it's still affected. One is from the Historical Society when you're standing on the porch, and you're looking. Right now you see the aqueduct and the river and the Palisades with this building down below you. You would now see that roof line coming up, and it clips a small view between two buildings across the street, you would lose that view. We'll document that for the next meeting, so you can see exactly what it is. And the other one that you lose, or it gets affected the same way, I think it's better to say, is Oak Street. If you're going up Oak Street, by the time you get towards the back of the parking lot, on Oak Street with the rise, you got a very nice view there. Right now, you don't notice this building at all. But with this built, you would see this building as part of the panoramic view. It doesn't block your view of the Palisades or the Hudson. but
Just
it-
becomes visible.
Yeah, it becomes a component in the streetscape, so to speak.
Okay.
What's the difference in the height of that, your proposed building, the back building, and I guess what's across Oak Street? There's the smaller building there, then there's the building behind it?
Right, we haven't measured.
Excuse me, Elm.
Yeah, we haven't measured the buildings that Steve has here. Steve, if you at some point wanted to share that, we could give specifics on what that is and say the height of Steve's building relative to the height of what we're proposing, and you'd have a direct comparison. I don't know if there's any interest in seeing. This is 4 o'clock on December 21st, and you see that the street is pretty much in shadow. If I look at the street though without the building built, I'm also pretty much in shadow. And the difference between the two, this with the upper level, you can see how the shadow hits. It comes across on Steve's building and then towards the back. That would be a element that would, as the sun set, it would sweep across. It doesn't come up as high if you're doing the lower roof. So that's probably the biggest difference that you'd get in how that works. As I noted, in June, at that time of day, you're not, you're talking about how much, not that sunlight on the street isn't important, but, by around 4 o'clock, you're getting shadows on that side of the street, but you're also getting continuous shadow on the west side of Main Street at that point. And I think we all can handle that pretty well. I don't know, any other questions, or, I know you've got other stuff.
Have you looked at bringing the eave down to the next floor so that appears as an attic space?
Starts to suggest a different roof form that I'm not gonna touch. The way I'd do that is I'd make it a mansard. And right now, I think we're being mansarded out. So I think it would be actually a very good way to handle it, but I didn't feel comfortable proposing getting another one. You've already got two. Actually, though, we eliminated the mansard and everything on Main Street at 66, 68, but you
Yeah,
still.
but several people are reacting to the mansard's roof.
Well, why does that necessitate a mansard?
It doesn't necessitate a mansard, but that would be, if you look at that context, like all the buildings across the street, up at Zion, what they've done is they've put a mansard specifically on top of the building for that reason, so you get a usable top floor. And you haven't lost, if I moved the existing attic down, I could do 2 units at that point, but I don't think this works with 2 units. I think, we started with 12 and we're down to 6.
12 units originally.
Yeah. So we've cut the density of the project in half, although and maybe I'm the only one in the wilderness saying this, I think the goal should be getting more residential units in the downtown, but I'm not gonna fight that. I've cut it from 12 to 6.
And I think my understanding when you came last time was not that we told you to make it more dynamic. I thought we were saying make it, either utilize the barn, make something of the barn.
If you can utilize the
Follow,
barn.
take something from the barn.
Which reminds me,
Yes.
what I think we need, and I'd like to do it on the 18th, so it's before the 20th. I think we need a sidewalk. I think we should go out and we should look at it, and I don't want to be saying what the barn is or isn't or anything else. I'd like everybody else to, have a firsthand experience of it and decide what they would like. I made an offer at the last meeting, which I stand by, I'm willing to do it. But so far, no one has expressed an interest in that, so.
There's been a lot of discussion written about the barn, of what the age of it is, what the status of it is, what the condition of it is. I'm hearing many, 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 many stories.
I started a really awkward argument between two people who are 83 years old on the street. We got into a conversation, and one of the people, both of whom grew up in Dobbs, have lived in Dobbs their whole life, one is basically saying, I don't remember anything ever changing on that in the 40s, and the other person's saying, don't you remember when they took that building down, they used the materials, they rebuilt, they built the new thing when they opened that boat place. So one person remembers it, the other person doesn't. I'm still trying to find, what it is.
I've heard both.
Yeah. Looking at the construction of the building and having had some experience, having renovated actually a number of barns and moved barns and converted them into residential use, I would not be trying to do that structure that way. There's nothing intrinsic about it that says, wow, this would be great. It's an old building. Old buildings are nice, but it's not of any historic significance. It's not, it's an old building. It's not a building that had a unique use. It wasn't owned by somebody with, a storied past. It's not a method of construction that would be good to preserve, because it's great to see old post and beam structures or something. It's put together with studs and joists with plates, and I know wire nail. The whole thing with wire nails kind of took on a life of its own. What I said is the evidence suggests it was built in the 40s, not the 1844 version that we were told, because it has wire nails. That was a reference to why I don't think it was built in 1844, not that it had to then be built in the 40s. The fact that the dimension lumber, which also has been somewhat misunderstood, dressed lumber does not mean treated lumber. Dressed lumber is referring to what the width and the height of the structural members are. The size that's in there now suggests that it's a post-20s, early 30s, going into the 30s, 40s, but there's a variety of different sizes in the barn. So it's
As
possible.
you know very well that there's many sides to this issue.
And I'm not prepared to say I know what it is. I just know that the building that is there now was not the 1844 building. I would not think it, the earliest I could see it being is maybe 1890 or something like that. But even that, I think, is a stretch given how it's put together. But that's to be determined by others. I don't think it does me any good to say what my experience is. I think what we need is somebody who's an expert in this, who comes in with a report and responds to SHPO and says, here's what our findings are. This is what we think.
Okay. You're done. Any questions? If not, I'd like to, even though this is a pre-submission, we're looking for direction and having the applicant get some ideas of direction. Anyone to speak? You look familiar.
And are you wearing a bow tie?
He was one of the two 82-year-old guys.
Steve, do you want to that?
I don't know. Yeah, actually, I didn't get the memo because I have this great collection of bow ties, and
By the way,
I'm really
I have to admit,
upset with everybody.
I agree. I'm upset too. It turns out this is a conspiracy. Tonight will be my last formal meeting as chairman of the planning board. I served my penance long enough. And these guys got together and talked to each other to try to cop. There's another one in the back. But they're wearing bow ties. The only trouble is many of them are clip-ons, which
Mine are, I have 3 great clip-ons, but mine are serious ones, and I'm really ticked off that nobody told me, so.
whatever it is, we're not going to listen to you.
You got a bow tie, you can't talk.
Okay. Well, if this were yesterday, I would have thought that Patty was playing an April Fool's joke. But in fact, I think he's really serious, and I think it's a shame. To speak to the variance issues, I don't think the planning board has the ability to grant a use variance. So that's the higher order of variance. I think you can grant area variances because that's within your purview in site planning, but I do not think you can grant a use variance. I believe there's another variance that's required I think the artificial connection of two buildings in fact, will continue to be, even if they're connected under the building code, I think they continue to be two buildings because of various fire separation issues and so on. So it's an artifact, so that in fact, I think you have to look at it regardless as two buildings. I think there's too much stuff being proposed here. I'm told that this has, by a lot of people, it has a significant impact on our property, but I'm trying to cast this in the light of what's important publicly and in general. So I'm trying to avoid, that tack, although I can't completely do that. So that I also think that the enclosure of parking, the other variance that's required is in the DB zone, buildings that abut a street need to have a ground floor retail use, or you need to get a use variance. So the ground floor parking adjacent to the street, it may be okay behind a lot down the block, mid-block, but it's not permitted. So that has to go to the zoning board, at the very least for an interpretation. So I think, there's going to have to be a whole other chapter here somewhere else. Unless it changes. So what I've tried to do is stay away from the parking, because I think it's a technical issue and it can be addressed by the planning board. And the offsets are the offsets. I actually think the enclosure of parking would be, again, an artifact to avoid the setback that is generally required 10 feet from rear and side yards, so that that's kind of a technical way out, but it doesn't really address the spirit of the offset of automobile uses from those side yards. So what I've tried to focus on in this PowerPoint is what I hope it's not a power no point. The point is that to graphically show you the impact. Patty, I appropriated some of the material that I put in play in the public realm, and that's fair enough.
I think it's respectful,
Well, I'm glad that actually there's some similarity in the projection, and so I wanted to do graphically what a PowerPoint can do, which is show the impact on views. And then, a sort of simplistic shadow thing, and then talk a little bit about historicity, because I think there is a case about history that is at play here, and that's not insignificant or related to technical, nails and that kind of thing. But I think it has something to do with memories, and it has to do with place and a character, the character of the village, hanging on to that character. So this is, Patty's right, I was walking up Oak Street. I was trying to stay on public ways, which when we did the LWRP view platforms, we tried to look at views from public spaces and views of Palisades, the river. We are a ferry-related place. So this is from Oak Street. This is actually from further up in the parking lot that's behind Sam's. And I think that the view issue has to be thought about in continuity. Movies are frames of things that sort of build up. And I think views in the village and views along the aqueduct, each individual view may not be the Ansel Adams, postcard view, but they add up because your eyes are actually smarter than you are. Your eyes and your visual memory is smarter than you are. In other words, that it registers these views that you pick up as you walk down the aqueduct. You're seeing these little slivers. They add up. And so it could be the death by 1,000 cuts to start treating each one, applying a standard that it should be, either it's the greatest view ever or it's something that's in play. So there's a view here. You can start to see the Palisade view developing. And as you walk into the parking lot, this is at eye level, you can see it's registering. And then this is what happens in, if you've ever taken a picture out in the landscape and you say, wow, that's a fantastic view of the canyon over there, and you take a picture and you get home and you've got this, you don't see the canyon. You saw it when you were there, but it's because your eye projects you into views. So the telephoto is not lying, it's actually creating something that you experience yourself. Your brain brings you into those views. So this view is actually, I think, there, even though this is a telephoto lens.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm interrupting. I think I should have prefaced the fact this is not a public hearing.
Yeah.
So that even though we're making comments, it's really directed to us for some of our thinking and to the applicant.
Right.
But from the point of view of a record on a public hearing, that will be when it's called.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah,
people
this
who
is-
are
this
making
doesn't-
presentations, this is just a preliminary forum.
This does not go on forever. This is a very short PowerPoint.
This is short?
This is helpful, too, I think.
It's,
So,
Patty, you didn't have to do that.
so,
It is, I respect Steve, he knows that.
so Patty showed this. This is what I believe is the view that's gone. And then this is the view from the Mead House porch, which is what I consider a semi-public space because we all get access to it several times a year at least. That's what I projected as the outline. I mean, I haven't invested time doing a parallel SketchUp. So there is a view that registers. I'm sorry if I'm in your way here. A view that registers from that location that is gone. There's a view from Oak Street that is blocked, a significant view of the river. And then I can't avoid, this is the view from my top floor, which we invested in and enjoy, and particularly that little glimpse of the Palisades. Bye-bye. So the winter sun angle thing is, I think it's also about, that's a slippery place. We've watched a bunch of people fall down on, not on our sidewalk, on that sidewalk.
Of course
across the
not on
street.
your sidewalk.
We're pretty careful. I mean, maybe somebody did when I wasn't looking.
Well, we get very little snow now, so we don't have a problem.
Exactly. No, it's now that there's global warming, we really are in good shape. But there is a obviously shadow analyses are certainly important in site planning. And that street, as a slope street, the winter shade, this is the November, so this is November 21st through January 21st at midday. So this is the highest sun angle. Other sun angles are lower in that time of year. And this is my projection of the height of the most recent application that I actually had my hands on. So and I'm going to just switch to historicity and just quickly move through this. This is 1908 map where pretty much what indicates the shape of the barn that's there. I believe that the lumber is pre-1902 lumber, just dimensionally. Doesn't look like it was reused, but again, all my sensibilities and kind of intuitions are that this is from 1880s, 1890s. This is a speech in 1914 in front of our building, and there's a poster in front of our building if you want to go back and look at this. And by this time, by 1914, this middle building here shows up, I don't know how to make that arrow work, but anyway. Oh,
It's up there on the thing.
okay. This building here is a close relative of the barn at 100 Main because it's got the same novelty dropped siding. It shows up in between 1889 and 1914. And it's a wonderful scene, right? It's too bad they didn't photograph the other side of the street. But you can see there's a collection of these kind of structures, these board and batten and sided structures, sort of wood frame, utilitarian. That's the character of Dobbs Ferry from 1890s through the 1920s. And my collection of buildings, I think, is resonant of that era. And I think there are other companions that keep that memory, that collection of memories alive. And I think that's a great thing. I think it's really an important thing. So 1924, the middle building on our property shows up and the barn is still there. And the other buildings across the aqueduct are still there. So what I see is, in the vision plan, John Shapiro and the Land Use Committee said, really the entire downtown area should be an historic district because there are so many 100-plus-year-old buildings. And there would be obviously non-contributing buildings and contributing buildings, and there would be some judicious way of allowing and promoting change. At the core of that is our National Historic Landmark that threads its way from Croton Dam to the High Bridge and connects hundreds of historic sites along the way, including a whole bunch in Dobbs Ferry. So if you've got the old Croton Aqueduct, which connects, I've left off some things on this, the Zion Church, South Pres, the post office is a National Register building. It's not late 19th century, but the Mead House, our building, 100 Main Street, the 12 Chestnut, the Gagliardi House, which is this wonderful kind of oddball thing right on the aqueduct, the Keeper's Barn. I left off Summerfield Methodist Church and the parsonage, which are really also from that era, and the Keeper's Barn, which is another wood frame relative from the last half of the 19th century, the Keeper's House, and the Carriage House on Hatch Terrace. And so I think that there's this argument about collective memory and the memory that remains in artifacts that's not easily dismissed. And again, more of this obviously on the public record in a public hearing, but that's my brief. I think there are some zoning-related issues that need to be addressed and a set of other qualitative ones.
I think that a lot of what's said, and this is a lot of the material that came in discussion on the board that I've been involved in for years, is that it may not be on a landmark issue of a federal or state level, but there are many things in the village of local historic significance. And in some manner, the board in the past, and should be in the future, concerned about these, if we can maintain them. The issue, of course, is a series of who owns it, what the economics are, and the whole issue about the barn, you can talk about that till we're blue in the face, because whether the nail is this way or that way, and whether it was this year or that year, was it dressed, was it finished lumber, these are issues that can be discussed by somebody of an expert status. Okay, keeping in mind, this is not a public hearing, just advice, suggestions. Anyone else wish to speak? Please, if you can state your name and address.
Good evening, Annalisa Corrales, 12 Livingston Avenue. I recognize this is not a public hearing. I do have some suggestions for the applicant. First of all, to listen very carefully to Mr. Tilley's presentation, but also, sorry, okay. Mr. Tilley's property contained an old barn just across from the barn that's on the subject property. And from what I understand, it was actually in pretty bad shape when he acquired it. And I would recommend, if you do any sort of site walk, that you take a look at his barn and what he's done with it. It is absolutely beautiful. They raised the roof, and there's beautiful vaulted ceilings, and it's a lovely structure. And I think that it's preserved the history and the character that was there and turned it into something more modern that adds character to the village. And I think keeping the character in mind is so very important. We've seen slowly, to use Steve's comparison, it is like death by a thousand cuts, because we have seen slowly projects like 66, 68 Main and 78 Main slowly cut off pieces of that view. And that really does something to the character. The LWRP, I just have to remind us all, says that extraordinary scenic views throughout the village are at the heart of the village's identity, and the village should do all it can to preserve, feature, maintain, and not just that, to expand them. I can't think of any example where we've expanded the views in this village. And this would be yet another example where we take it away. And I would really encourage the applicant to think about that carefully. We're thinking about the short-term gain of landlords, commercial landlords here, versus the long-term loss to the residents of this entire village. And that cannot be underestimated. We should not pick one over the other in a way that favors the short term. And, this is also in the code, when we talk about the downtown district, the building design standards that have been created for the downtown district talk about they're intended to ensure compatibility with the historic character, not just the character, but the historic character, and design quality of the village. And I don't see anything in this design that is creative and trying to think about how we can maintain the character of this beautiful barn, which I recognize is falling apart in some ways, but it has character and it's been here for a long time, and there is a historical significance to it. There are creative things that could be done with that barn. It could be converted into a beautiful loft space, and there are so many other things that could be thought of here, rather than increasing the density of this village. And the idea that, they've gone from 12 to 6 units, so that's such a win, is a hollow comfort for me. When you start out with something that dense, it's not such a win to say that you've come down to 6 units when you see a structure like this. Thank you.
Thank you. The village has lost some significant historic buildings. There used to be a building called Rochambeau. This is where George Washington supposedly slept or whatever he did there. But in any case, that building burned. What you have now is Washington headquarters, which is built, it was done beautifully. It was done by an applicant who was a village resident, and in no way could we really, everybody was very upset when the building burned down. But that did go back to the time of the Revolutionary War. The other building, which many people didn't think it was so significant, was quite old, was of course the Beau Rivage, which just fell down because of, I guess, old age, whatever. It totally collapsed. The building disappeared. It was not historic?
It was historic. It was gutted. It was gutted so that it would fall down.
There's many arguments on that. That's an opinion. That's your opinion. They had spent a lot of money on doing work before it totally collapsed. But I won't get into detail, but I was there and looked at the structure, looked at the demolished or the collapsed structure, and there was so much decay in the wood, that I believe it was standing out of habit. It was quite decayed. Okay, anyone else wish to speak? Sir? Keeping in mind, this is not a formal hearing.
No, I'm cutting it down to 3. I'll be very short. I know it's not.
Okay, I'm making that a note.
No, do, and I'll give me time to get a tie on.
You're on.
Couple of things. I mean, Bruce Richards, 153 Main, Dobbs Ferry. When I came to Dobbs looking for a place to be, you know, the buildings that were interested me were 10 Main, Steve Tilley's, and the old library. Unfortunately for me, the old library was up for auction, and I had a week.
That's one of the other buildings, yes.
Yeah, and it too was falling down. And to argue that, you know, it's changed, I've got pictures of the library over its 170 years where the doors changed, the windows changed, and I can find you a cut nail, no problem, that came out of it. But, you know, it had 7 layers of roofing on it. It was ready to fall down. I got broke just trying to keep it standing up. But I really think these old buildings are really worth saving for a purpose. That purpose is the village deserves better. I mean, that's all. It's just, I really think that the scale of this thing is so disproportionate to what it was. Steve Tilley's structure barn, it steps down towards the aqueduct. This one steps up. Why not take the middle structure where you're trying to make this weird little bridge to connect the two, push the building back building forward, so then you give the aqueduct more, so there is room to step down. I mean, it's just, it's making me a little nuts to see all these buildings just say, well, it's old lumber, let's get rid of it. Thank you.
You mentioned the library. I was underneath that building when I discovered, I was called by the librarian, and I crawled underneath in the crawl space and found that the columns holding it up had totally decayed.
Yes, sir.
It also was standing out of habit.
Yes.
When they discovered that the file cabinets were opening by themselves because the floor was settling.
There's a 2-inch pitch and 24 inches.
Yes.
Yes. And as I say, there were 7 layers of roofing. The main beams were cracked.
It was really.
That building was even being allowed to use by the public was really.
I can tell you that I went under that crawl space slowly, and I went out very quickly.
Well, it's good that they're both small because they're in that same space.
Sir.
Mike Marrow, 32 Walnut Street. I would just comment that even forgetting about the barn, there's the issue of encroachment on the aqueduct as you walk along. This is another example of where we're proposing a large wall, balconies, basically sitting over the top of the aqueduct trail. You know, that's not the character that anybody's looking for when they're going for a walk down the aqueduct trail. I mean, that is our treasure. And, you know, the barn, you know, probably a lot of people don't even notice because it's not obtrusive, right? This would be obtrusive, and this is, you know, similar to some of the other questions of how much do we have to back up against the aqueduct trail and overbuild at that point. You know, the only sort of code technical thing I'll bring up today is, you know, with the 2 buildings and which one is the primary and which one's the auxiliary building, and how big is it? I mean, it's 1 lot, right? I mean, I've heard a lot of discussions of, you know, how tall the buildings should be on Main Street in the downtown district. If this is a unified building, is it 3 stories? Is it 4? Is it 5? Because if you start from Main Street, how many feet is it? How many stories do you have on that second building that are above the floors on the first building? Right? Just things to think about. I don't think that's what was intended as far as, I mean, if you did it as one structure, it would be a huge mass, right? And you can complain about that. But if what people see is really just the mass that's on the aqueduct trail, that's the bigger issue than whether you've got a little building out in front on Main Street that is the main address for this property.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Peggy.
Peggy Blizzard, 12 Chestnut Street. Just a couple of things. If this building is allowed to go up, then you've got the one down on 66 Main Street. You've got bookends. And what will happen over time is that it'll be so easy to keep filling it in. Pretty soon, you're going to have a wall on the aqueduct. Now, maybe all of you don't use that aqueduct. We do. We live next to it. And I see people all day long. It's not just people who are running and biking and walking dogs. It's people going from one place to another. Kids with backpacks coming from school, going home. I see people with bags from the Stop and Shop. They've been shopping, they walk back and forth. So it's a heavily used trail. And I would really hate to see a wall put up there. And one more thing, we have a barn, and we have a house that's about 140, 150 years old. And you're all invited over on April 25th and 26th because we're having open studio tour. And I promise I will clean it up before you get there. But when you get to see that barn,
If you
it is
clean
the
it up, you
most-
may lose historical significance.
I won't clean it that much.
Okay.
But it is the most beautiful place on earth, that little studio. I go out there every morning between 7 and 7:30, and I start
Are you
painting.
inviting us early in the morning?
10 o'clock. 10 o'clock. Okay. Please let's tear this gray barn down. It can be repurposed. You've seen what Steve has done across the street. You will see what somebody did at my house, that beautiful little building. And it's a treasure, and you get to look at it from the outside, and it gives meaning to all of our lives. So thank you so much.
Keep in mind that at the next meeting, if the applicant says yes, there'll be a public hearing, and you can redo all of these. So this is a rehearsal. Yes.
How are you? Maria Maggi. I'm at 15 Elm Street. I understand we've talked a lot about the views that will be lost to the village and to the people that are walking on the streets. My house, right now from my second floor, I have complete view, especially in the wintertime, of the Palisades and the river. This building will completely eliminate that entire view. I understand progress, and I'm all for it, and I think that we can find a happy medium where it's not going to impact everybody so severely. But my other issue that I am concerned with is the parking. And we're talking about parking spaces and all of this. The houses right now, the residents that live on Elm Street have a difficult time during a normal weekday finding parking for their own cars for the houses that we live in. We say one unit or one bedroom, and we say one parking spot. But the reality is that most of the time, 2 people will be living there, and 2 people will have a car. So that's really not 6 cars, it's 12 cars now that we're really going to think about, unless you have 1 person living in that unit. So the impact on the parking for us is probably going to be the greatest, because when we come home from work, and we're parking 3 blocks away, and then in the morning you have to get up and go and find parking or find your car and get on with the day, that's a hassle. And I feel that if we're living in our home, we should be able to come out of our house and get into our cars and go where we need to go. So parking is an issue that I think really needs to be looked at. I think that, I understand that they want to do something with this space. I'm not so sure that I would be opposed of something being replacing the barn or restoring that, whatever it is. That's not so much my issue as it is what directly impacts us at our address at 15 Elm Street. So, please take into consideration the parking spot and the reality that you say 6 units and 6 parking spots. The reality is probably more like 12 cars and not
You understand
6.
that's a code requirement.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand that. But again, like I'm saying, the street is very small. There's limited parking as it is now. So
I
please
understand, I
consider
hear where you're
that.
coming from, but if an applicant comes in front of the board,
Absolutely.
they work
No,
with the
and
code.
I understand. I understand how the code works, and I understand that. But we really got to talk reality. And sometimes code isn't always the reality of it. So really looking at the big picture, we can put numbers down and say, yes, we're following the rule, but the reality is that it's really going to be greater than what's projected. Again, I just wanted to bring this out. Please consider that when you're thinking about it. And, I know the impact on the environment as far as the views are concerned. I understand that. Probably as a resident, my home will be affected the most as far as the views, because I have a direct view. The house next to me right now is looking at the barn, and they're one floor, and the house behind me is 2 floors equal with mine. So I probably will be the one that loses the most, along with this gentleman here who has the views. It's a small little community. It's a small street. It's not a big street. The first plan that he had with the lower pitched roof, I can see maybe it working a little better for all of the residents. I understand that. But I think the bigger issue here is where are we going to fit all of these vehicles downtown when parking in itself right now is an issue.
Can I just say something?
Right.
I just wanted to know that the village is looking into parking, we're looking into having a parking study, et cetera. So the issue of parking is being very seriously looked at
Okay.
at the moment.
Thank you.
You're absolutely right. This is a major issue in Dobbs Ferry, is parking, not only for residents, but also for the businesses.
No, I
So
understand.
it's a
I know.
large problem.
I know,
Thank you.
because the
Thank
shoppers
you very
park on
much.
my street. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Mavis, I've been sitting here waiting for you.
Thank you. I am Mavis of the Aqueduct, like Deirdre of the Sorrows. South Lawn Avenue and the Aqueduct. There's something I want to sort of remind you of. I know we've been working on the Keeper's House to turn it into a visitor section house for a long, long time, and you've lost patience with us. But Steve and I are actively involved in its future. And, you know, this is going to be a visitor center. We are going to promote it. We are going to build tourism for Dobbs Ferry, and I know the village has invested in developing tourism. This is the best possible thing. I remember one day when the aqueduct was announced on a radio station, I think it was Fordham radio station, and 85 people came down the trail and stopped at the Keeper's House for me to give them a lecture on history. We are going to have more and more of tourism, of people coming from the city, really, I can assure you of that. But they want some charm. They don't want to walk down this terribly important section of the trail and see modern condos. They want to see a little bit of gracefully done renovations like the Tilly's quarters. And it can be done. It can keep this section that visitors from all over will be walking. I can assure you the state is helping us do a lot of promotion on it. And you know how actively we're making an education center. We have wonderful plans for exhibits that are hands-on. It will draw crowds, and I can assure you people will come and tell their friends about it if it is a charming walk from Dobbs Ferry. And if we can have some of the views, now Hastings does have much better river views than we do. And people will also walk south. They won't only walk north from the visitor section. But just keep that in mind, that it can be a commercial benefit. It can draw people. They'll tell their friends in Queens, and they'll tell their friends in Soho, come up to Dobbs Ferry. You get a wonderful historic walk. You see beautiful things. You see the river. You see the Palisades. Anyway, that's it. But keep that little tourism economic benefit in mind, not just charm.
Thank you. One more, please.
Hi, I'm Joanna Rock from 373 Broadway. I live in the oldest house in Dobbs Ferry. And when I bought that house, the people who sold it to me for less money than they could have gotten it, because the person who did want to buy it wanted to rip it down so that he could build a driveway to his sister's house in the back. And they sold it to me because they knew that I was going to restore it, and that house is so amazing. And I feel that I don't understand why, when these proposed buildings are going up, why is it progress? I mean, I don't see progress in that at all. It's not progress to Dobbs Ferry. I think it's completely detrimental. I think we really do need, like Bruce and Lisa were saying, and Peggy, we need to keep the charm of this town. It's so important, and to add more buildings with more people, more children, more stress on the school, then they have to be in. They have to add more trailers to keep the kids so they can get their education, and then there's more pressure for the parking, and there's more pressure for traffic. And where does it get us? How is it improving? It's not improving Dobbs Ferry at all. And I think that to maintain the integrity of the town is just one of those things that's just so important. And I've spent so much money on that house, and was it worth it to me? Yeah, it was worth it to me. I could have just sat back, kicked back in a little condo somewhere and had a lot of money to go away on vacation. But I see maintaining the integrity of Dobbs Ferry and keeping things going, like, the historical aspect of it is just so important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? If not, we're going to go on to the next item with the pre-submission, and I'm going to ask the applicant then, can you have all of this together with the if there is a variance involved, do a zoning? That's your decision. And if not, could you be ready at the next meeting? And then I will recall for a public hearing at the next meeting.
Yeah, I mean, we felt we were ready for tonight. We're certainly ready for next meeting. We're going to look at some of these ideas. I have to digest some of this because I'm not sure what direction that means, because I can actually see two different directions.
If you came in with two concepts, one in total compliance, which then allows you to come in and then ask the planning board that you want to make something else.
Who is this guy? Isn't this the guy who said, we are not here to pick which option you
We'd
want?
rather,
You chastised me once.
just
for
because
that.
you're wearing a bow tie, you're not going to get away with this. But it's very simple. You
I have
said
no
you will
problems.
come in, you will
Right.
come in with something that does
And
not
we'll-
require a variance.
Right, and we'll give you those as, there's option this and option that, and we'll keep it focused down, so it's not a
Please.
Chinese menu. And I think that's, a lot of good direction, and we can see where we go.
And from the public point of view, then they would understand the next meeting will be the public hearing. I make a motion then that we recall for the public hearing at the next session. All those in favor? Okay, Patty, you're on for the, what is it, May, June, July, whatever it is?
Hopefully, it's going to be the May meeting.
May meeting, very good. Okay, it's now 9:20, we have several more on the agenda. I'd like to go right into the next one. The next one is a public hearing. This is a public hearing for site plan recommendations to the Board of Trustees to modify and convert the existing structure and removal of the repair bays. This has got to do with the mobile station at 430 Broadway. And to speak for the applicant is?
Leo Napier with the law firm Harpness, Crout, Pearlstein. I'll skip into the PowerPoint. This is an existing photo of the site. I'm sure you're all very familiar with the site.
Is there an architect here with you?
There is not. I do have my
engineer here with you?
I have my traffic engineer as well as the property manager.
Okay. When it comes to those issues, could you have them speak? to those
Certainly.
issues?
If I can't address any topics, I'll turn it over to them.
Even if you can.
Mr. Chairman, if you, this is a public hearing, I know there's an issue we discussed about the parking issue. You are able to waive that parking issue. If you want, you can open the public hearing. It was properly noticed, Brian, is that right?
Oh, okay, that's an important question.
This
Yes,
was noticed?
notices and signage.
It was-
Okay, you can, so you may want to open the public
I
hearing.
will open, this is the first time, so I make a motion, we open the public hearing for the, this is item number 3 on the agenda. Do I hear a second? Second, all those in favor? Done. Now you're formally on, and one of the issues had to do with the parking.
Certainly, and I get, the next slide is a blow-up of the site plan, and so as I understood it and was relayed to me earlier today, the issue was that the parking is proposed up generally along the rear property line, and there's a 10-foot setback requirement. The site layout doesn't really allow us to create parking in any other location, with the exception of immediately adjacent to the building, which on the prior proposal from over a year ago, the planning board and the board of trustees were not in favor of. So this is really the only location where we could propose parking. With that, I don't know if there's any comments or questions or discussion.
Well, does that comply, Brian?
Well, this is the issue that we just were speaking about. There would need to be a 10-foot setback, but under chapter 300.
That would be
can
along
waive
this.
it if it meets your thought process of how you want this site to work. I think there's an issue that you need to speak. Dr. Greeley's here, can discuss whether he believes there's parking layout is the best or better layout than any other layout, but I think you can consider that, so you can waive it if you deem appropriate. If not, then we need to get a variance. Right?
Yes, sir.
The abutting property here is, let's see, that would be,
That's the diner property.
that's, okay.
Yes, you need to have a 10-foot setback on
The
that side.
10-foot would be from here, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, and it's approximately 3 feet, the way it's set up at the moment. So there'd be about a 7-foot requirement for a variance.
And I think there was a discussion at some point of having the parking against the building.
That's correct, along the back edge.
Yeah, no, that was rejected by the Board of Trustees, but even on the north side of the building there, that didn't work though?
You wouldn't be able to get enough spaces there, and it would also create, really, if you were gonna do angled spaces in that direction, you would wanna send the traffic flow around
Which we
this
don't
way.
want, yeah.
Which, based on the last round of comments, we changed the traffic flow to be counterclockwise.
On the parking layout, Mr. Chairman, you may want to hear from Phil.
Yeah, we should. That would be appreciated. This site is difficult because you cannot leave the site with a left turn
That's correct.
from any of the exits.
I'm sorry, quick question. Is the car parking space on the right, is that 10 feet from that side yard? Or that
You're
property
talking
line?
about this one?
Yes,
The last one?
the last one. So is the variance only on one side or both?
The code actually reads that you need to be 10 feet from any rear
All,
or side yard setback.
So you have a double, the variance requires this one
But is
as
that-
well as all of these.
But is that 10 feet already? Do you have 10 feet there?
To this property line?
Yes.
No,
Probably not.
no, they don't.
Okay, Phil? You're on.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, members of the public. Philip Green with Macer Consulting. We were asked to review the traffic study as well as to provide comments on the parking and circulation. This application was originally submitted. There were modifications made based on the previous reviews. The most recent round of reviews on this particular project included 3 memos or letters from our office. The first one dated back in December of 2014. In that letter, we focused on 3 items. One was, at the time, there was no traffic study done. Number 2 was some general comments relative to the site plan in terms of circulation, which the applicant has just talked about, of making it one-way counterclockwise, which the plan now has. And number 3 was, our concerns relative to traffic flow on Ashford Avenue due to the proximity to the traffic signal. The applicant made a resubmission and basically made the modifications in terms of the circulation. They indicated that they needed to have two-way access, both entry and exit on Ashford Avenue. However, they've indicated that if there's a problem, again, we were concerned that by having traffic exit here, that because traffic queues up from the light across the driveway, that it could be problematic. The applicant has stated in his submission that they would be willing to live with a condition, that a condition of the approval, that if there was a problem, they would modify it to become right turn entry only. I believe that was in the
And no
letters
exit.
from the applicant's attorney, okay? So they've asked that it be two-way for various reasons, circulation, trucks, et cetera. So I think with that stipulation, because we're still concerned, because, if you visit the site today, when traffic tries to exit, the queue generally extends past the driveway throughout the day. When you get further away from the intersection where Walgreens is, it's a little bit better because you get more of a gap and there's less queuing in front of it. So the way they've answered that question was they would live with a stipulation in the approval resolutions that they, if there was a problem, they would revert to a right turn entry only. Now, just kind of give a synopsis of the plan, just in terms of history, and the chairman, commented on it. They're maintaining, right now, you are not permitted to make a left turn from this driveway. That's restricted. That would be maintained. You are not permitted to make a left turn into this driveway. That signing exists and would be maintained. Exiting the driveway out onto Broadway, the driveway locations here, there are no left turns permitted, okay, and that was the state that put that restriction. So in essence, left turns out of the site are not possible today. People do it based on observations. You'll see people making those movements. So that was the initial memo we had written back in December. In March, after we had an iteration and a copy of a traffic study that was prepared for the applicant, we had some additional comments. We again reiterated that there would be increased traffic. In round numbers, this site today generates somewhere between 20 to 30 vehicles entering and exiting in a peak hour. Okay, that's with the current use. And you do have some existing convenience facilities. You can get a cup of coffee there. It's not, high activity. But with the increased usage, including a Dunkin' Donuts is proposed here, approximately 600 square feet, I believe. The projections show that those 30 vehicles an hour would increase to about 60 vehicles an hour.
Double.
Yes. Now, with this type of use, those vehicles are not all new to the system, okay? They're passed by primarily and diverted trips off the system. So when you look at that increase, if you look at other streets in the village, you're not going to see that kind of increase. However, at the driveways, they need to be handled. So one of our other comments was to try to maintain a connection from the gas station, which exists today, to the diner. This is the diner building here. This is the diner parking. And essentially, this is wide open. I believe on this plan, this was the former building next door. The existing Walgreens building, I believe, extends right up to about where this property corner is. So this is the side, I'll call it the back side or the west side of the Walgreens building. It extends along here. Right now, you can cross from one property to the other, whether there are easements or not. It's just continuous pavement. So the applicant, in response to that, maintained an opening here. Okay, this is just proposed as striping. So their answer was they'll provide a connectivity, but they provided it in this area. It's the board's determination, but our recommendation would be to try to maintain that further away from Broadway. Right now, there's nothing that would preclude a vehicle, as it is today, to go from Mobile to the diner or vice versa. The problem is that it's very close to where the turning activity happens off from Route 9. So, one of the ideas, and I believe there's a plan somewhere that has a blow-up, but one way of addressing that would be to slide this entire array here further to the west. Maintain the opening where the drive aisle exists behind the building today. And again, they're without any easements in place, the pavement that's there today that would still allow cross-traffic. If one of the adjoining property owners ever closed that off, it would still allow the ability in the future to have that connectivity. And I believe the vision plan talks about connectivity between sites. So our recommendation, I think the applicant responded to our comment. I'm suggesting that maybe the way to handle that would be to slide this whole thing further west. You would still maintain the parking spaces, but the connection, and really where you want the connection to be, would be further to the east, where it is today. If you drove behind the building, this is where you connect.
But if you, I'm sorry, can I just ask?
Yes.
But if, let's say I go in to get gas there.
Yes.
And now I want to get out by way of sneaking around through the diner and the Walgreens parking lot.
Yes.
In the current circulation, I'd be driving against, to get to the new
Okay.
opening you're talking about, wouldn't I be driving against the direction of the?
Well, there's two options, okay? One option is to circulate around the building. Keep that counterclockwise circulation so you can still get to Walgreens and the diner. The problem with this location, and again, this is why, we're talking about in terms of pluses and minuses. Typically, traffic exiting from either the diner or Walgreens, you have to realize that the edge of Broadway is right here. So one car length, you're at a point where you could be blocking that. The other reason that we thought to have it at the easterly side is, this is the pedestrian corridor. You have, pedestrians here. You'll see today, they'll cut through and cut over to the building through that area. So again, this is the plan, I guess, this is a blow-up of that area. So it would be, sliding it again to the west. But our feeling was
You're making a supposition right now.
Correct.
That the roadway there in front of the diner is owned by,
Yeah, so I
Okay.
think the first question was about the 10-foot setback.
no,
and-
no,
Oh.
no. I'm bringing up another issue, and that
Yes.
is we keep talking about sliding the parking to allow a pass-through.
Yes.
And my point is, the roadway in front of the diner, as
Yes.
I understand it, is owned by Walgreens.
Well, okay, just one clarification. I think.
No, I just want to clarify that. We have two people saying no, and yet I was told the driveway is owned, the roadway from Broadway leading to Walgreens is owned by Walgreens.
Okay, I think
We can't make an assumption
Yes.
now that they will allow
I agree.
these
And-
cars to go through.
Yes. One of the reasons for the change to this site plan was that if Walgreens and/or the diner closed this entire area off,
Yes.
which they could, okay?
Yes.
That we wanted to make sure that the site alone
Good.
had the proper circulation. That's the premise we're starting with, and that's
Good.
where the applicant started with his plan. We're saying from a planning standpoint, assuming that that didn't happen, okay, that the diner and Walgreens didn't barricade it, that this would be the area where, well, first we said you should provide for connectivity so that if the diner came back for redevelopment in the future or something else happened at Walgreens, that you've now set up the ability that there would be a cross-connection between the
safe- a
properties.
safe means.
A safe cross-connection. That's what our recommendation was. So
Good.
the applicant responded to that. The only point I'm making is that, he made the connection here, and I understand why. But from a practical standpoint, it may be more beneficial here.
You might want to state, what you're showing there is almost exactly what happening now with the Starbucks off the Sawmill. So
Correct.
Maybe you want to slow down.
Yeah, just to, a comparison, down at the Chauncey Square, when that was approved, there was a driveway location that was problematic. So the village had to make some changes to allow that traffic circulation to flow better, okay? So we're trying to make sure that we plan something here that would allow the proper connectivity.
Because the one at Chauncey is a total disaster.
Yes.
We don't want to recreate that.
Yeah, so when that was fixed. as
Nobody
best as it could.
anticipated the type of
Exactly.
customers.
So I think the applicant has responded. I'm just throwing out that it may be more beneficial to slide this and keep the connection there. And again, Walgreens or the diner theoretically could close that off today. But I don't think they're going to do it because there is a positive benefit to all properties being connected at a proper location. To jump into a couple other items, and I think the applicant has been responsive to everything that we've asked, but a few other comments. Right now, when traffic backs out of the diner, and again, this is a two-way drive aisle, there's continuous pavement from the existing mobile building is about here, I believe.
Yes.
So the applicant is removing a good portion of his building to allow the circulation. So he's reducing the square footage of what's there. But right now, when vehicles back out of their parking spaces, they back into this area, okay? So the way that this plan is drawn, and you can see it more on the blow-up, these vehicles are parked and they don't meet up where the proposed curb line. This is a proposed curb line, so there's a physical separation proposed there. What we've recommended is that at a minimum, there should be some sort of a wheel stop so that if a vehicle did pull in, that he would not project over the property line, number one. But number two is you would start, and again, it's a crossing of a property line, and that's why I don't think the diner would ever close this off. For ease of people exiting from these spaces, they actually, the back of their car crosses the property line when they exit. So what we're suggesting is to maintain that overhang area. So if the way that this diagram is drawn, it shows the vehicle stopped, not pulling any further into the space. But without a wheel stop or some treatment, the vehicle could actually pull further forward and overhang, and it would affect just the operation there. So I think that that's a pretty simple, addition.
Just, we did pick up on a couple of your comments. This plan is actually a revised plan based on the
You have
comments
to
you
use
just
the
described.
microphone,
So there are
sir.
real stops.
He has a mic
Sir.
on, he has a mic on.
Oh, you have a mic?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
That's what I'm like.
You stuck that one in.
Yeah. So I think the applicant has been responsive, and as he's pointing out, these now, I guess this is what the label, I can't read it from this angle, but you now have wheel stops there to accommodate that.
Good.
It still doesn't address the 10-foot offset, but we believe that this circulation pattern is the most efficient, okay? As you can see, there is no parking proposed around the rear of the building. You have about 20 feet clear between the Walgreens building and the back of Mobile. There is some equipment being put in here, so in this area, that will come down in width a little bit from what it is today, but you'll still have more than adequate width, okay? I believe this comes down to about an 18 or 17 plus dimension from here to where this equipment is. This plan now reflects a suggestion we had. Right now, you have a crosswalk from the church, from the northwest corner to the northeast corner. This is the crosswalk. And there's also a crosswalk from Wall Grove across in this area. So this plan has been modified to provide pedestrians are going to take the shortest path, okay? So the previous plan had a crosswalk here. This has been modified. And again, the spaces were just shifted slightly so that we believe that would function better, because that's where you can see people where they walk today. A few other comments in terms of the fact that there's restricted turning movements here. We're saying that the traffic, and again, based on standards, based on square footage, the type of use, the increase would be 30 to 60 roughly in, and the same 30 to 60 exiting. They're not all new to the road system, bless you. But they do have to be handled at the driveway. Another reason for the connectivity, because some of those trips could come from Walgreens, or they may get coffee here, go over to Walgreens, so there's a benefit for the connectivity. The one other item, I guess, in terms of the applicant, early on, we had suggested about showing some turning diagrams for vehicles, and that would show also relative to deliveries, okay? Whether it's a single unit truck or a box truck, to show how the path would be accommodated. So we feel that's something that needs to be done. Again, depending on which plan the board prefers, whether you leave the connection here or you take our suggestion and slide it over, that would change a little bit how those truck turning and vehicle turning movements would be shown. But we think that's important to see that. In terms of this curb area here, right now, the driveway is being tightened up a little bit from what it is today. If you look at where vehicles turn in, when the curb line was redone with Walgreens, the drop curb area here, the last couple of feet, you'll see when vehicles try to turn into the site today, they actually jump over that curb. But that, again, a detail that when they do the turning diagrams, I think there may have to be some curbing, slight curbing changes here, nothing significant. I think those are the major items. Our last memo or letter was March 30th. I think this plan was prepared in response to some of those items, including the crosswalk. We've also, the town engineer had asked for DOT's input. The applicant has said they will go to DOT after this process.
DOT state or DOT county?
New York State DOT controls Broadway.
Broadway,
So
but the county has
Yes.
Ashford.
correct.
That wasn't me.
Yes. So I think it would be good to get that input early, but if the applicant feels that he wants to leave that as a condition of approval, that's their prerogative. But I think, we're in agreement with the village engineer that input early is better than late.
I have a quick question for you. I remember at one point in another area, the county, pertaining to a service station, gas station, the county or the state, not sure who it was now, said there is a requirement for 150 feet for the driveway from the intersection. Does that, I know this may be grandfathered.
Yes. This doesn't satisfy that dimension, but again, it's an existing driveway, and that's one of the reasons why we were suggesting to make it entry only, to get that distance, because you don't
But-
want the influence close to the signal.
Okay, because I'm going to ask the question, the next question goes to planning, and that is, if the change of use, originally a gas station, now it's a change of use, does that grandfathering still carry over to the change of use?
They've had a convenience store, so I don't think we'd call it a change of use.
You're saying it's tied in with the gas station?
It's been there for quite a time, so
I know
think
that.
the
I'm agreeing
application-
that it's the
Yeah.
gas station is grandfathered.
No, but there's been a convenience store there for years and years.
Yes.
Okay, that's one argument, okay.
But,
And now we're going to get
On the
gas at
DOT and the
Dunkin'
county,
Donuts.
have they received plans? They've had a chance to comment or anything?
I don't believe so. I believe the applicant would know, but I think their response to the comment was that they would do that after, village approvals.
But
and
that's a
then
legal
make it
question.
We
Maybe
would
you
normally
can answer that.
require-
Mhm.
I would think, I know with the county, we would require that a set of plans be sent to them, I would think, as a matter of course.
Okay.
I'm a little surprised. I would think both the state and the county would have gotten information. The difference is whether we get a report from them or not. That's different from whether we've submitted to them.
The DOT approval would be limited to any modifications to the curb cut on Broadway. And as the plan's kind of been a work in progress, and every time we come, there's another little
Yeah, but
change here and there.
DPW's county does Ashford Avenue.
Understood. And so what, we fully intend on submitting to DOT and DPW once we had a general sense from the village as to what the appropriate layout for all the different curb cuts and everything is.
Oh, you see, the difficulty is that you have a proposed layout. We look at that, and then we find out later on it's been disapproved by an outside agency that supersedes us. So I think it may behoove you to at least get a preliminary feeling for whether or not these are acceptable.
My client operates a number of gas stations throughout the county and throughout the state, and has dealt with the DOT on numerous
Good.
other sites with similar
Good.
issues. Doesn't anticipate there being any issue with anything we're doing.
But is there a piece of paper from either party
No, we have not submitted to the DOT
Okay.
yet.
Yeah, you should send the DOT and the county, because although Ashford Avenue is now a village road, I think the county still needs to approve if you change the curb cuts.
It's Route 134.
Yeah, but they
West-
gave it, they made us take it when we took the money for the park.
No, we took maintenance.
Yeah, I think they still need to approve the curbing, the curb cuts, yeah, I think you're right. So we should send it, you should send it to them, just let the building department know that you've done that, copy them, please.
We will do so.
Thank you.
I have a question about the sliding of the array of cars.
Yes.
Doesn't that restrict the driveway at all?
I'm sorry, which
If you were to
restriction?
move those west as you were proposing in your,
Yeah, well, what I was suggesting was to take this and slide it over and then leave the opening, the cross connection, pretty much where
right.
it is
but
today
does
at the.
that create a restriction on the driveway entry or exit or whatever? it is?
Well,
Onto
just
Broadway.
the crossing of the property, no, because the driveway out to Broadway is still right here. So if I'm at the pump island, I'm gonna exit here.
Oh, so it won't
Here,
interfere.
I still back out of the space and I would exit at the same point. So all it does is move this cross connection, which is, again, just striping, makes that cross connection further back. These vehicles, since the angle parking, they would still back out, so this vehicle would now be here, backing out, and still be able to exit.
No, but Javier's question was that
Yes.
whether, you busted my laser there.
What'd you-
Here we go. The issue is if you move the first car up to here.
Yes.
Can you still operate that curb cut?
Yeah, this
Okay.
would still function fine, because we're not bringing it all the way forward to this point. We're just sliding it over to about this point, and the angle actually helps you here.
Okay.
So we would just, remember, this width here is about 20 feet today. We don't even need 20 feet, but we would just slide it over. And again, I think,
As
you
long
know-
as it doesn't interfere with the curb cut over there.
and I think what we've asked is, in terms of turning tracks, just to show the vehicle turning tracks, and that will show that there, it can be accommodated.
good.
If the turning track shows it can't be, then we may have to shift it slightly, but I think it should be fine.
My
Okay.
second question, sorry, and I'm sure somebody's looked at this, you have basically the deliveries, now you have obviously a more demanding site here, you have a panel truck, I guess it's gonna drop
Coffee.
product and
Coffee.
so forth, and do they park in one of those spaces, and then can the next one make a turn?
Well, right now, this area, today, there are a couple of parking spaces on the south side of the building.
Yes.
This is proposed as a loading area, so that a small panel truck or a single-unit truck, that's where they would be able to unload their product and maintain a circulation around the site. The applicant can provide more about that, but that was their response to
And do they
providing
go
that.
up and they make the loop also with the cars parked?
That truck would be able to circulate around the back of the building. Again, that's one of the reasons we've asked for the turning tracks, is so that we can see how that would function, just to make sure that it would work fine. There's other issues relative to the fuel deliveries, but I think, that occurs today. I don't, see that
that's, yeah.
changing, there.
It seems to work.
When it occurs off hours, it's fine. When it occurs in peak hours,
No.
it's a different story. But
You're right.
Again, that's something the board could deal with or make a recommendation regardless of these changes.
Okay, this being a public hearing, and there's a couple outstanding items, can we get those then for the next meeting?
Certainly, we'll take a look at the change that Phil mentioned.
The one change is,
Down.
is opening up an area on the easterly end of that section.
We'll
So,
have to take a look at it in plan form to make sure that we're not gonna cause any.
oh, sure, no, that was
So,
the concern that was
certainly
brought
we'll
up several
do-
times,
we'll do
yes.
so.
And the other one had to do with getting the clearance from DOT and
We
DPW.
will make that application.
Yeah. That goes fairly quickly.
While we're here, I don't know if that was it for the site plan, I do have renderings. I know the last time we were here, there was conversations on the canopy.
The canopy was a major item,
So
yes, to me.
I can show you the renderings now tonight if you'd like to jump into that. I don't know if there's any further
Please
comments
do.
on the plan.
The last comment I had is that they've addressed our other traffic comments. They did respond to all those.
They
so
did.
Yes, they did.
Excellent.
Okay?
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So these are proposed floor plan and the elevations of the new structure, the renovated structure.
With the removed bay at the
Correct,
northerly
removed
end.
bay, and this is similar to where the applicant left off with the Board of Architectural Review on the last go-around, sans the bay. And this is one rendering with a flat roof option on the canopy, a flat canopy option.
What is the thickness of that? What is the height?
36 inches,
3 feet.
3 feet.
It
Which-
does look like more than that.
In order to fit a fire suppression system in there, I think you need to have a certain width to it. And then a different option is with a mansard roof, affection roof, which I heard the earlier conversation on no more mansard, so we can just delete that slide if that's not something.
Glad that
We haven't gotten input
Patty
from the Board of
left,
Architectural
yeah.
Review yet. On this go-around, on the last application, this is kind of where we left off at the board before the application ultimately got denied at the Board of Trustees.
Is this a very important item?
The canopy?
Yeah?
Yes.
I mean, you're fighting pretty hard for this.
Yes, it's a fairly
Is it
standard
gonna be-
modern amenity on most redone stations nowadays.
It's done on highways, I see it all over the place.
Okay. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I just had a thought before the meeting, because I drove by it the other day, and I asked Marcus to, using Google Earth, to go to Google Street View in Irvington. So this is one of the 100, you could argue one of the 100% corners in Irvington. It's that gas station, there's a gas station right there. And they have a canopy, but it is quite thin. When I drove by it last time, I noticed it's actually quite thin.
Like a couple 2 feet?
I don't know if it's even 2 feet. And I guess, I personally, well, the mansard roof, of course, if we're gonna put if it's a gas station, it should look like a gas station, but and the mansard roof, or any kind of roof, I think is ridiculous in my opinion, but the Architecture and Historic Review Board will tell you what they think. But if there is gonna be a canopy, there's gotta be a way to do one that is thin.
Scott Parker, with the owner. If you look at this picture, you can see right here, there's a little red thing. That's the fire suppression. So the fire suppression canisters have to be upright, and they go on top of the canopy. So the way, the site that we're talking about is at kind of the bottom of the hill. If you're coming, from the other side of Ashford, that would be very visible on the top of the canopy.
This is why you're making it thicker?
What's that?
That's why you're making it higher?
Yeah, I mean, it hides everything. Typically, that's why that depth is there. Structurally, obviously we can get down this far, but then we've got to figure out how to, hide things up there that you don't want to see.
So if there were a couple boxes on top that enclosed the
We've
fire
done that.
suppression,
We've done
that
that.
could work?
Certainly.
Instead of having a 3 foot, it could be 1.5 foot.
If you go, which way am I going?
Oh, I'm sorry. When you come down Ashford, isn't it blocked by Walgreens?
True.
Yeah, but
No, the other side.
He's talking about when you come
Coming down
Coming from
Broadway.
this side.
Let me,
South
is this,
and you're on the
is this
higher
canopy
road.
lit? Is it lit?
No, we're not proposing to
You're
to
not
light the
proposing
van.
lighting, so
No,
that'll be
we
very clear.
figured that wasn't getting anywhere.
No lighting.
This is an example of one that we recently built, just so you can see that's.
But that you said earlier could be 3 feet.
That is 3
That
feet.
is 3 feet. Plus
So
a
that,
roof,
but
that's
you
3
could
feet
make
and a
it
roof.
narrower if there was a way to enclose those tanks.
Okay, I thought we had one more picture on here that showed a view from above. But we took a picture from up here on this hill, and you can't see the canisters on there, the fire
But you
suppression
see a
canisters.
3 foot thick.
You do. And, again, this is,
Would it bother you to make it 1.5 feet?
if you didn't mind seeing the cans, no.
No, but you put an enclosure around them, a box.
It's fine.
I think it'd be good to get a better idea of actually what we see in terms of these canisters, because I know like the gas station, the Getty, when it's Caddy Corner, right? They don't have a canopy. They have a fire suppression system, so they're not hiding it at all.
Right.
And I guess you see those little nozzle things. Sure. And I guess the canisters are actually attached.
Mounted on the
thing. I mean, to me, it looks like it's just part of gas station equipment. So I guess I don't understand, I feel like the
Good.
whole fire suppression thing here has become like overblown and overcovered. I can't figure out why
On those little stems, those are fire suppression.
That's correct.
Huh?
Those are the nozzles.
And so-
Right, no, but the thickness.
Is
Like,
the
thickness
the whole
is-
business of hiding the fire suppression system, I don't
Is-
quite get.
It sounds, yeah, instead of making it that deep, high, thick, whatever word you wish to use.
Yep.
Make it as narrow as possible, if you can get down to 1 foot. The objective is to protect the driver and the attendant from the rain,
Yes,
or in our
correct.
case, snow.
Correct.
And so that if you do that with a 1 foot, 6 inches, I don't care. But don't use the fire suppression system to say it has to be 3 feet.
And again, you know, every
Okay,
village,
drop-
town
Right,
board,
right.
everything's different. Some people have said, I don't want to see those
Yeah.
red cans.
No,
So-
that's, it's okay.
Okay.
I like.
Understood, direction understood.
Let me ask you a question, I'm sorry. Clearly on that, I know you can't zoom in, those stems are far away from the supporting poles of this canopy, right? So I'm wondering if there's some new code that is not in force at the Getty or something. Could you, to this day, you know, put all the canisters on the pole?
On the poles, yeah, we could. We can hang
Okay.
the canisters, you know,
Same way
the
it is with the
red,
Getty.
the red cylinders.
So there's no law change that somehow now if you do have a canopy, you need to be.
No,
5
you would
feet
just see it here instead of having it up top hidden. That's all.
Wonderful. I think that's great. Paint them with stripes. They'll think it's a barber shop.
You might be onto something about the barbershop.
I don't go to one. Okay. Would you be ready at the next, you all be ready at the next meeting with
Is that the first Thursday of next month?
first Thursday of next month? And
Should
you'll
be
have the
coming
honor of
through,
not
yes.
dealing with me.
Not a problem.
That's, won't be a problem.
And-
Okay.
and Marcus, will I get a similar referral back to the Architectural Review Board if they meet in April? I don't know if I already missed that or not, but I
That-
get their input.
What's the next
Brian?
But,
We've already submitted the packages, so you have the minutes.
well, we also look forward to those 2 letters, one from State DOT and one
Oh, I
from
guess-
County
I
DPW.
guess technically, do you have to take comments on?
Yeah, if there's any public comment.
Today is a public hearing. Anybody wish to speak on mobile? Anybody have, you ride a bicycle. What do you care about gas for?
Can you pull up the drawing of the site plan again?
Could you use the microphone,
State your
Bob?
name, address.
And state who you are? I don't know who you are.
Rob Barron, I'm from 10 Cricket Lane. So my big concern is, I have a couple of concerns. One, this is, we always talk about protecting the aqueduct, as a, important mode of transportation for the village. This is actually one of the most important sidewalks in the village. Okay, and everybody knows that people are going to school, they're going to town. It's also a significant transfer point for our bus system. Here we are trying to get a lot of our Mercy College students to use transit. They are. They're actually getting off the number 6 bus, transferring to the number 1 bus going north, okay, and then going to Mercy College. So this is, and the big concern I have is that these driveways with the now double the number of cars on it is going to create significant hazards on this crosswalk to those people walking, including our kids going to and from school. This is sort of peak time. I actually, I get the Dunkin' Donuts thing. I mean, people are like rabid for this coffee. And so I kid you not. I mean, I've been at other, in town, over at, near Scaramella's. I mean, it's like you can't believe the cars going in and out of there. And so that's my big concern, that here we are trying to create, our vision plan is calling for more, trying to encourage more pedestrian use. As a bicyclist, I know I'm sorry, I'm saying it. As a bicyclist, when I make this turn here and coming along here, having the 2 driveways to sort of navigate, where you have cars, even though they're not supposed to make a left turn, they're looking left, they're looking right. You now have a lot more cars on these 2 driveways that are getting in my way. So that are risking essentially my life, in this regard. If this does go forward, I would hope that the planning board would sort of push the applicant to sort of negotiate with the adjacent buildings. I know, Steve, I know it's a difficult thing to do, but if we're trying to, I'd be very supportive of this project if there weren't these curb cuts here. So I think that's the biggest
problem with this scheme. I'd also, but if we do eventually restrict these turns, I'd like to see some hourglass fill. You know, those hourglass things that sort of, by design, physically prevent a car from making a left turn where they, because like they have to curve so much they can't come around. I'd also like to. It wasn't that offensive, Darius. Come on. I'd also like to see this crosswalk here be a raised crosswalk, so that when pedestrians are coming across here, that there's something to sort of delineate other than paint on the ground, that people are crossing here. I think that's it. I just don't think, I think this is a really scary thing for Dobbs Ferry from a pedestrian standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you. If you go into the past TV programs that showed this meeting, you may have heard some of these concerns in the past. Anyone else to speak tonight? Please. You're going to become a regular, I see. You have to redo your name and address, make sure it's the same one.
Yeah, no kidding. Annalisa Corrales, 12 Livingston Avenue. Thanks for letting me speak again. And I just have a question. Have they studied the traffic patterns of a Dunkin' Donuts so that, they talked about 20 to 30 cars at peak times, which sounds really like a small number, but what will it be at peak times if there's a Dunkin' Donuts there? And similar to the person who spoke before me, I have major concerns that, it does draw just huge crowds. And with that being the pathway to the middle school and the high school, so many kids crossing through, I have the exact same concerns. And so I'd love to see more data on what the actual, volume of traffic will be. It's already a very taxed, very busy.
Excellent question. And Phil, could you answer that one, please? I know you did.
Again, Philip Greeley. The applicant used the published data for this type of use, Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks type traffic generation, in making the estimates. Okay, so when we talk about the increase in volume, it's based on the coffee shop Dunkin' Donuts as part of that square footage. The numbers would be less if it was just convenience. However, the convenience store today does sell coffee. I believe that it's very limited. So if there was no Dunkin' Donuts, but they expanded the convenience, typically the coffee increases also. But the specific study that was done included the 600 square feet as a standalone generation for Dunkin' Donuts coffee shop category, based on studies of several of those stores. So I think the applicant has addressed that. Otherwise, if it was just convenience store space, those increases would be less.
Okay.
And again, we're talking about peak hours. In the morning, those are the types of increases that you would see on top of what's already there.
So the answer is yes.
While you're up, Phil, can you just say something about the concerns about the pedestrian traffic here and the bus?
I think.
Stay on the mic. Stay on the mic.
I think Mr. Barron's comments are noted. Pedestrian traffic exists along those sidewalks, school children. There is pedestrian traffic. Going to the building today, even with the limited convenience, there's pedestrian traffic across the site. I think in terms of one of the reasons why we're pushing for having that cross connection to Walgreens is to cut down on the number of vehicles that have to go out the Broadway driveway and or the Ashford Avenue driveway. If that connection stays in place, regardless of any easements, from a practical standpoint, in the morning, if I was at that site today and I went in and got a cup of coffee, I could go back through the easterly driveway in the back, and I could come through Walgreens and get out to Ashford at that location. So there will be
Again,
increase.
no left turn out of that driveway.
That's correct.
either.
That's correct. But if I wanted to eliminate the conflict of coming out right near the corner where the pedestrians that are coming across the street from the bus or the school children are crossing, I could have that movement further away. Not everyone's going to do that, but you'll see people today making that movement. So I think the connectivity would help address that. You have to have curb cuts to get vehicles in and out. Yes, there would be increased movements, but I think the connectivity would help that.
I think we should also not be blind to the fact that children, people, walking on Ashford Avenue going west that wish to go to Broadway may not stay on the sidewalk, but
Correct.
will walk straight across the site. So
Yes.
the concerns you brought up are part of our concerns, and that is they're walking through the area where cars are backing out, moving in.
Correct.
So it's a lot larger concern. Yes, and I think there's going to be, it's very difficult to control. How do you control an 8th grader, 7th grader, 6th grader who's walking over there? It's going to be tough.
They actually,
No, they go to beer.
they actually walk through the park, they walk through the Walgreens parking lot and by the diner and around. They don't come to the corner and turn.
Take the shortest route. The shortest route.
The last comment that Mr. Barron had was about a possible raised crosswalk here. I think one other alternative, because I don't know if if the applicant can do a raised crosswalk there, would be do some sort of a stamped concrete as opposed to just striping. It
should be
because
indicated.
the problem with striping is that if it's not maintained, so I think that's something that at
But
least should be
I'll ask
looked
the
at.
applicant to please look into that. That's something that would be very looked upon favorably if there's some way to really identify the sidewalk areas. Okay, any other questions, comments? If not, the applicant? I didn't see your hand, I'm sorry. You just did it. Oh, I don't have any guilt then, okay.
I would just like to note that Judith Spikes, 5 Brace Terrace, the concerns of cyclists, pedestrians, children, school children going to school, and bus has already been noted. I'd just like to add one other perspective, which is that of a person who is patronizing Walgreens or the diner, or indeed the mobile station. I patronize the diner and Walgreens, and I used to patronize the station before that corner got all crowded up after Walgreens went in. Already, in addition, I've heard, and I believe I heard at a board meeting recently, that Phelps Hospital has leased the 2nd story of Walgreens for doctors' offices for a group practice there. And I was wondering already where people are going to park, where the doctor's going to park, and the staff and the patients, because already now that parking is at peak usage times, existing parking is often almost used up. And I don't know how many people are aware of that.
You're talking about the Walgreens parking lot.
Yeah, well, I remember when Walgreens was presenting its proposals and it was approved, it was said that the diner and Walgreens had the diner clearly would not have enough parking of its own, on its own property, but that Walgreens and the diner would gladly share. Walgreens would gladly share its parking with the diner as long as it didn't need it itself. And it is beginning to need it itself. They have signs up now that any car left there with 30 minutes
Well, if you haven't
will be
noticed lately,
removed.
they put up some signs saying there's a 30-minute limit.
Yes.
And that was partially the diner impacting, partially the church services impacting,
Mhm.
and possibly in
The
getting
residents.
ready. Pardon?
The residents. The medical office. Neighboring residents.
No, it's the, okay, neighboring residents, but the issue is that the parking lot was full and they couldn't get their own customers in.
No, I understand that.
And
I
that
understand
would take care of your doctors on the top floor.
So, yeah, and also I'm told by some people who work in those 2 buildings that people were parking there and leaving their cars all day to walk to the train station. But, I mean, I really don't see where this additional parking is going to come from now, I mean, I ceased to patronize the gas station because it was just too crowded. And when you get a lot of people piling in there for a Dunkin' Donuts and driving through, I don't
It'll be
understand where it's gonna come
self-correcting. If there's no access, the people won't go there and the business won't exist.
Okay, have you
These
tried-
things are self-correcting.
That was an argument that was made in Ardsley, and then I'll stop. But have you ever tried to drive in Ardsley during peak morning hours on the Sawmill River Parkway? going, what about, south toward Ashford Avenue.
I,
You can't get out on the street.
yeah,
I don't see the self-correcting aspect, but I did just want to bring that perspective.
okay,
to the
thank
attention of
you.
the board.
Anyone else tonight? If not, you say you'll be ready at the next meeting, which is the first Thursday in May, then I move that we extend, or we're going to continue the public hearing at the next meeting. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is number 4. That is a pre-submission conference of site plan review for proposed substantial renovation and reconstruction of the existing structure, including...
I'm going to recuse myself for this.
You're going to recuse yourself?
Yeah, just for this
Okay,
one project.
good. One member of the board is recusing for reasons of potential or perception of conflict. Okay, this is an existing structure, reconstruction, which includes the stormwater management treatment, and it's located at 10 Sherman Avenue. And to speak for the client, and you have a microphone. We have,
Okay. Hi, my name is Natasha Walko. I'm here from Opachich Architects. We're representing the clients, Brenda and Greg
you was an
Winiarski.
architect?
I'm from Opachich Architects.
Oh,
I'm-
okay.
Yes. And we're here on behalf of Brenda and Greg Winiarski, who own the property, because they're out of town. So our clients, the Winiarskis, had purchased the property at 16 Sherman Avenue, which we had renovated for them and which they are currently living in. And obviously, when this property next door, 10 Sherman, went up for sale, when they moved in, they had concerns about what might happen with that property. And when the opportunity presented itself with the house going on the market, they saw it as an opportunity to protect the investment in their own house, but also make an investment in the community where they've chosen to remain, as they had relocated just around the corner from Seneca Street. So the proposal is to take the existing building down to foundation and rebuild new on the existing footprint.
takes the existing structure down.
Well, that's what they're estimating is the most economical
And then
approach.
sit on the existing foundation.
Yes, so
Extend
that
it-
we're not increasing the footprint of the existing structure.
You're going to use the same footprint.
Ideally, yeah, the same footprint. Hopefully, the foundations are adequate to support.
Hopefully?
Well, we haven't taken the structure
I mean,
down.
we
We're
don't
not
go-
going to, no, we're not suggesting that we're going to build a structure that cannot be supported
Yeah,
on
we
the
don't work on,
foundation.
we don't work on prayer. We don't,
We're not suggesting that we're going to build a structure that will not be supported on the existing foundation. Prayer is a good thing, though. But what I mean is that we're not going to be increasing the footprint of the existing structure. If the existing foundation is deemed to not be adequate, we would naturally pour a new foundation within the limits of the existing
let me
building.
break in a minute. Brian, when they make statements such as the existing structure, who tests to make sure that what we have as a foundation is adequate for the new building?
An engineering report would be required to state that the foundation would be sufficient to support the proposed load as the new structure would require.
And that would be required by your department before
Yes.
you go forward?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the proposed takes the existing driveway space and reclaims it as paving, and then fills in some of that, so we're losing some additional coverage there. The first floor, it's maintained as a single-family residence, so first floor has usual entrance, mudroom, kitchen, great room, bedroom at the first floor level. Oops, and then, hold on.
So the description on the application for the building permit is a complete interior and exterior renovation. It's not a renovation, it's a reconstruction, from what
Well-
you just told me.
Well, there were discussions about maintaining the existing structure and working within the limits of that framework, and then subsequent discussions with the contractor have suggested that it might be more practical in economic terms.
Take it down.
Exactly.
Brian, are you
Rather than
familiar with
fighting
that
with a
change?
structure.
Because the building permit that came to your department says clearly to interior, exterior renovation. And what we're listening now is rebuilding from scratch.
Yes, if they do remove the building down to the foundation and reconstruct the building, there's a new series of new requirements. So
This
that
is
may
different.
not be
Okay.
accurate
Then-
description of what the proposal will be.
Okay, thank you. I'm just reading what it says here, so.
No, I understood. Okay, so this is then what's the proposed rear and side elevation in the new scheme?
Is that building total, is it different from the other one?
Is this building different from the other one?
Yeah.
This is the proposed building.
Okay.
Here's the old one.
Gotcha. Okay. I see it. Is there anyone here excited about this one? You are? You're interested in the whole story? Okay. Okay. Are you familiar with this?
Totally.
Totally. So it wouldn't get you too excited if we kind of,
I'd love it if they demolish the existing house. It's an eyesore.
you're in favor of it?
I am, yes.
Okay.
That doesn't mean I would approve what they want to put up, but honestly, it's a very, it's an awkward, characterless house. and I'd
Okay, no,
love to
I'm
see
just
it.
aside because you're not on the microphone, therefore, even though you're talking, it doesn't exist. Okay. Okay. No, I just wanted to make sure that who was in the audience.
Okay, no, understood. So this is proposed rear elevation, proposed side elevation. This is 16 Sherman shown in context next to it, so you can get the sense of the scale. And what the clients have enlisted us to do is to really make it more in keeping with the character of the rest of the neighborhood and still deferring to the scale and structure of the other houses that are
Excuse
around
me,
it.
Darius, does this go in front of the architectural board?
Yes.
Well, so you understand that
Yes.
we're talking about, since your foundations are
Yes.
not moving, hopefully.
Right, no.
That your side yards, your backyards, all of these have no changes
No changes.
from the original.
No
The only
changes.
thing is the structure itself.
Yes.
And what you're describing now is more into your field, the architectural field,
Yes,
which you're gonna have the same dog and pony show in front of the architectural board.
yes,
Okay.
understood.
Are you changing any driveways or anything?
There is an existing, there is an existing, oops. Let's get this back here. There's a current driveway in the front that goes to what is now the garage that I mentioned is going to be redone and eliminated to be steps and then paving that leads to the new front entrance. And then there is existing paving back in here that was theoretically for a garage that might have existed in the back that is going to be eliminated. And then there is a curb cut in the back here for a future one-story or single-car garage at the back of the property within all the setbacks
So the
that are
answer is
required.
there'll be changes to the driveway?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
The answer is, you heard that.
No, I was just wondering if there's any, because if you're not changing the site, you could consider waiving it subject to all engineering requirements.
That's what I'm thinking about. Your drainage system, there is a storm sewer retainage system?
Yes.
Stormwater, rather, retainage?
Yes, we enlisted the services
You
of
you know
Mr.
it has to comply, that has to go through the building department, so you're gonna be seeing all of that.
We have already enlisted an engineer. We have
Wonderful.
it all done.
Wonderful, and you have to set yourself up for a session with the Architectural Review Board.
Yes, yes.
And at that point, I do agree. Is there anyone here to speak on this, or more questions? You have to take the microphone and your name, blood type, address, everything.
Sorry, I just wanted to, we were feeling optimistic, so we had notified. So do I need to give you proof of that?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, give it to the building department.
Right here, right here.
Oh, that is the total building department right there.
Did you get just this part, or did you get this part?
Is there an existing curb cut where the garage is shown?
Thank you.
Excuse me, is there an existing curb cut where the new garage is shown?
I do not believe there is an existing curb cut where the Oh, sorry, did you say where the existing garage is shown or where the
new-
proposed?
The future one-car garage.
There is not an existing curb cut where the future one-car garage is proposed.
Okay, doesn't that fall under site plan issues?
Yeah.
Sorry to complicate things.
No, you can look at this in site plan. That's why I was asking if there were changes.
No, if
But
there's
you-
anything like that, then we can't waive it, right?
You can, you don't.
Pardon?
You normally don't, but you can.
Okay, but we don't.
I mean, you're gonna change the
There's
the
a change.
location.
If there's a change, I think we should go through the.
Okay, yeah, whatever you want.
Okay.
Excuse me, isn't there a requirement to have another car length away from the curb? Just the location of this garage, it looks like.
It's pushed right up?
Yeah. I thought you had to have one car length before entering the garage.
How many parking spots required?
You'll need, this is how many, 3 bedrooms?
4 bedrooms.
4 bedrooms?
Yeah, okay,
You need 2?
that's a good one. Do you have a one-car garage, correct?
Single car garage, yes.
So the comment was, usually there's an area to park off-street, meaning out beyond the 10-foot line, for a car parked on the driveway. Will there be room for a car on the driveway?
Yeah, this current, you have one location where you're entering for the future one-car garage. That's not part of your plan now?
The one-car garage is not part, I mean,
Okay.
it's part of the site plan, it's not part of what the construction work that's proposed at this time.
Well, are you looking for an approval for that now?
For the one-car garage?
Right.
Not necessarily. That was just factored into what the stormwater calculations were for the future, so we had that covered.
So your garage, your parking and garage is where?
At the rear of the property on North Lane, which is an access road for the houses along that street.
At Access Road, that's the paper street? What street is that?
It's designated as North Lane on the survey. I don't know if it's considered a paper street or not. It's an alley, and the various houses along Sherman and then Belden, I guess, have access and garages,
That's how
excuse
you
me, on
access
that.
it in the property now?
Sorry?
That's how the property's accessed now?
No, not currently.
How is it currently accessed?
Currently, there's a garage at the first floor level on, off of Sherman.
So you plan on changing that?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, you're losing, if what you say is right, you're not applying for the garage, you're actually losing one parking space, plus whatever length of driveway, off-street parking, right?
Yeah, and make sure you have access that way too. Are there easements going back there?
No,
Ha-
not that
have
I'm aware of.
Okay, I think we have a number of questions from staff.
This is I see a problem, and that is you're gonna build this new one-car garage structure. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, once at some other point, we don't have currently drawings for that structure, so that would be.
Not
We
applying
would apply
for it.
for that secondary
Then do you have spots for 2 cars
on,
on the property?
not on the property, based on this plan.
I don't have a real site plan either.
There should be 2. You're not showing the new garage. I mean, the
Okay.
garage is not part of your application, even though I'm looking at it.
But do we have the, in either case, though, the one-car garage would not satisfy the
No, but
requirement?
then the one-car garage is too close to the street, so that you can pull off the street and park in front of the garage.
Understood.
That would make 2.
Understood. Yeah, the one that would be inside, and then the additional car that would be parked in front of the.
Which is very often in this village, you'll see many of those where the driveway extends 20 feet from the building line, from the property line, so you can park a car on the driveway.
Understood.
So your proposal now is not to have any parking on site.
Okay.
Is that right?
We don't, okay. We have, the current proposal would have the one-car garage on the property. We don't have drawings of the physical structure, as in elevations and for it. At this time, if we're just talking about the site plan, then we can consider the one-car garage.
That's fine, that's fine.
Okay.
But the issue now is,
That it
if
has
this
to be-
is site plan showing the one-car garage,
Yes.
it doesn't comply.
So then the one-car garage would have to be pushed further in order to
To
comply.
give 20 feet from the building line.
Okay.
You gotta consider that it's also a paper road.
Yeah, you gotta make sure you have access on North Lane.
Oh, that's right, that's a paper road you're coming off, it's
No,
not coming off
that's what I'm
Sherman.
Okay, so
Do-
what
do
does?
you- do you-
Yes, please.
I'm actually the engineer that did the actual site plan, so let me just.
Yep.
And you are?
My name is Sal Triano. I'm with Crossland Engineering. I'm the one that developed the site plan based on the approach that Opachich
Good.
Architects had prepared. The original the original site plan had two driveway sets, one actually that came off Sherman and one that actually comes off Shaw, so there's two curb cuts. Off of Shaw Lane.
Okay, got
It's
it.
off along the side.
So
and that's
two
a-
separate driveways.
So there's two separate driveways. Of course, the reduction that they were trying to do is something that's a little bit more receptive to the neighborhood, eliminating the front driveway, making that a
The
walkway.
one off Sherman.
The one off of Sherman, eliminating the majority of the impervious surfaces along Shaw Lane, and then introducing a new curb cut along North Lane. North Lane is a paved right-of-way.
But it's a paper road,
It's not paved. It's not paved.
not
It's a
paved.
paper road.
It's not a village road.
Okay, it's.
It's
Well,
not an improved street.
When you say paper road, doesn't mean it's covered with
It
paper.
means it's on.
Right.
No, I
It's-
understand it doesn't mean it's covered with paper.
It means it's on the filed map
As
of
a
the
road,
village,
it's
but
not-
as you know, I don't know if you don't know, these were all discontinued years ago. But in order to gain access to that road, obviously you have frontage on it, you probably have access to it, but we gotta look at that. And then you would have to have, either improve it to the standards of the village, potentially. And we gotta ensure that you can get fire access there to the driveway. There's a lot of things I think you need to look at, so I think you need to schedule a public hearing.
This is more complicated because it'll end up with the fire department participating to make sure it's illegal. Yeah, we're concerned about life safety. And if there's whole issues in here, that's part of it, as well as the parking requirement. That's a separate issue. So you have to take a look at it from the point of view of, you're closing off the other two driveways. That's important from your point of view aesthetically. And now you're on a different street. You're not on a public street, not a publicly paved street. So that is an issue.
But even, I just want to be clear, because all of the houses that
Don't look
share
at, don't
that-
look old, that's old.
Pre-existing.
No, I
It's pre-existing, yeah.
understood, but there is a new garage that's currently going up on that street.
But the department doesn't know about it.
Oh, it's,
There is?
there is a new garage.
I'm all one.
I don't think anyone's saying,
No, I'm
people
just
are yelling a lot
wondering-
of things in the audience, but we have to look at it.
Right, no,
Staff
understood.
needs to look at it, the planning board needs to look at it, the fire department needs to look at it, so.
We can't, I don't think you're ready for a public hearing. Okay? This is now listed as a
I can, you can.
pre-submission, and there's a
I gotta
lot
make
of
sure
work
it's
that
legal.
you would have to do before the board would
Let
be
me-
comfortable in, at least I would be comfortable in calling a public hearing.
I have just one question then, and it may save a lot of time and
Please.
effort in terms of
I'm
departmental
into saving
reviews.
time, go.
If we actually maintain the curb cut along Shore Lane and carry ourselves in, I mean, the overall proposal here is a net decrease in impervious surfaces on the property by the order of about 600 square feet, so.
So you would say if
fairly
I had a
substantial.
driveway coming in that I can park a car?
Correct. If I came in off the driveway here, that instead of having this garage set here, we moved the driveway and garage over on this side, giving you the adequate space, maintaining the curb cuts that are on Shore Lane right now.
Which is a legal road
Correct. So, and that would eliminate the need then to go through the
of
fire
going on the
department.
paper road.
Exactly, and then you eliminate the need for the fire
That's why
department
you paid
reviews
these
and
big
things like
bucks
that.
to come up with these things.
Okay, so but that's something that, again,
Brian said that's a paper road also.
Oh, it is a paper road?
is it? Okay.
Sorry,
South Lane and Shore Lane, they're all.
sorry about that.
All right, well then,
You just lost those big bucks.
that was a good approach, but I guess it didn't work.
Good idea,
It was worth a shot.
wrong venue, sorry.
All right, but very good.
Okay.
You have to take a look at this, please.
Not a
Okay,
problem.
so then it's whatever the requirements are for the road and adequate access on the north
On-
lane side of
And
the
the
property?
legal road and how to make make it into a legal road if you're going to be using the paper roads. What are the requirements? And I'm not gonna give it to you now, you're gonna get that from the building department.
Just contact Brian, we can discuss all these issues before you.
Okay,
He'll
awesome.
identify all of
What are you
those.
doing tomorrow morning, Brian?
We'll close tomorrow.
Oh, darn it.
Tomorrow is Good Friday. Today is Bad Thursday.
Understood.
Okay.
Yes, very bad Thursday.
Make an appointment with Brian when you can. We'll sit down together.
Okay?
Okay.
We're set. You know what you have to do. And
Yes.
we'll then call for another pre-submission at the next meeting so that you have all your
Oh, one other
ducks together.
pre-submission?
Pardon?
Never mind. Never mind.
You,
I would like to speak.
would you like to speak? I got the impression you'd like to speak.
My name is Margaret Markey. I live at 37 Belden Avenue, which is kind of catty-corner from the property we're discussing, and I live on the other side of North Lane. North Lane is a bit of a puzzle in the sense that I honestly don't know its status either, and I think it's really quite unclear. But the Winiarskis, who restored what we all call the former Joyce James house, did a great job on the house, but unfortunately, they put up stockade fencing along the whole back of their property and encroached onto North Lane in order to be able to turn into their three-car garage back there. I wish they hadn't done it because, you know, as nice as the house is, the way North Lane looks now, it really took away a lot from the very rural character back there. I don't know, it really changed it. So my plea is, please revisit that awful three-car garage and stockade fencing, because I know you were the architects for the renovation.
Okay.
And be more sensitive to the neighbors. This project was just awful from that perspective.
They'll come back at the next meeting with some better.
And as I said, and I understand the Winiarskis are buying or wish to buy the property next door to me, 29 Belden. I mean, you know, I'm glad that they're restoring it, and I'm awfully glad to hear they're going to tear down 10, which is an eyesore, and I sure hope what you put up is nice, and I think it probably will be. But the way the lane affects our property values a lot, and when that character is destroyed, it destroys our property values. And I don't know how, as far as fire access is concerned, I don't know how a fire truck would ever get down there.
Carefully.
Period. I mean, well.
Okay,
Well.
thank you.
Yeah, that's.
Anyone else? If not, then the next meeting will be a pre-submission. That's the first Thursday in May. The next item on the agenda is the pre-submission conference site plan review. This is to reinstate, this has been approved a long time ago, the approval for construction of a new house on the existing foundation, again, at 31 Maple. Mr. Steinschneider.
Good evening. Many years ago, before the new code was adopted, we got all of the approvals necessary for 31 Maple. The people who we got that for subsequently determined that they were not in a position to proceed with it. They have since sold the property. The people who have purchased the property would like to proceed with the work, so they would like to have the previously approved drawings reinstated. At that time, the only approval required was the Architectural Review Board. The Planning Board did not have a look at it back then. There's really very little of a planning nature that is pertinent to this. There was a variance that was granted, all kinds of other things were done,
So no changes have taken place?
no change is, it's the plans, in fact, the drawings that we submitted are the drawings that we got approved. No changes made whatsoever.
Counselor, is the variances that were received some time ago continued to today?
I gotta look at them, but yeah, I believe they would be.
Okay.
It was a 1-foot side yard variance.
But whatever it was at that time?
This is a single-family home?
Two-family.
Two-family.
Two-family. That's it.
Do they have off-street parking?
They have off-street parking, although their off-street parking comes from South Lane. And if I could make a comment, and I think maybe at least one person on the board will maybe agree. I should never think that Rob's going to agree with me, because I'm so wrong most of the time. I think those neighborhoods are the ultimate model for how things should be done. I don't know why they weren't the neighborhoods looked at when Hickory Hill and areas like that got built, but this network of alleys that serve the backs and provide the
Yes.
cars a place to be other than the street, it makes wonderful sense to not have curb cuts on Maple or Sherman or Belden
If
and
it
use the
makes
lanes.
such wonderful sense, we have to stop it immediately.
That's, it's the Groucho Marx one, I'm again it. The reality here is that the fewer curb cuts we can get away with on the streets, and the idea of fire department, the people have frontage, not this one, Maple, but Maple has frontages on two
They're on
paved surfaces.
public streets.
That one has frontage on 3 streets.
Well, let's
It's not
stick
an
to
issue.
this one item. Is there anyone here to speak on this one? No one, silence. What's the feeling of the board on this? The only change then is really the date.
Yeah.
Are you going to?
We will have to go to the ARB.
Okay.
And, standards in the village have changed. I'm sure we'll have to do more stuff than stormwater, which they didn't used to do. We'll do that. But I think the engineering department in Dobbs Ferry is adequately sophisticated to be able to handle the stormwater system.
Patty,
for a
you really don't
two-family
have to
house.
keep doing that.
I'm not giving compliments. I'm hoping that's true.
Any waiver should include that meet all
Yes.
engineering and building requirements.
The building requirements and the architectural review.
Yeah, that's an automatic ARB, but engineering too.
So I'll move then. If that's it, is it a public hearing? No, it's
No, it's not.
pre-submission. So
Yeah.
I'll go right in and say, I move to recommend to the Board of Trustees.
No, just
We don't
you.
have to? This is us. Okay, that we waive with the understanding that we'll comply with the engineer's reports on the drainage or any other condition.
Yep.
Do I hear a second? Second. We got a second. All those in favor?
Thank you very much. Now, does this apply
Unanimous.
just to that property, or does this also apply to 100 Main? Is it?
I have no idea what you're smoking, and I think your tie is too tight around your neck. Okay, there's one other item on the agenda, and that's got to do, it's not written on the agenda, but we'd like to take care of it tonight, and that is the issue of having a special meeting on April 20, which I'll still be chair at, and at that meeting, we will discuss the site plan, the final site plan approval for Rivertown Square.
Subdivision.
Subdivision, sorry,
Give a little
subdivision.
background for the public. The subdivision expired, technically expired, so they will need to resubmit an application for subdivision approval only, which is within your purview, and for your consideration and approval.
We
So-
had this at the last meeting, and had given them we said 4 months.
Right.
And at this point, we're kind of expediting it, and we made to
Right.
April 20.
And what we're gonna do is we're gonna have to we're noticing the public hearing, so you'll call for the public hearing on the April 20th, special meeting.
It'll
You'll need a motion and a second.
it'll be a public meeting, because at that point, we will make the final approval of the subdivision.
You need a motion.
I made a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor? Done. So the meeting then will be held on April 20. That,
Before you.
Wait, I had one more little thing. Before we get into celebration mode, I asked for a site walk on the 18th. Is that viable for 100?
April 18th?
April 18th, site walk for 100 Main,
What day of the week is that?
Saturday. I can Saturday or Sunday.
I will not be in town, but that's okay.
April 18th. 7 o'clock in the morning?
Whenever is good for you, you know I'll bring the donuts and coffee.
6:30 in the morning?
What are we doing?
Looking at the barn.
All of a sudden, Steve's
We're going
going,
to
what
look at the
time?
barn.
Anytime you want.
Okay. How about 8:30?
8:30, Saturday, April 18th, and I will bring the coffee and the donuts.
We should, Margaret should notice that,
Yeah.
on the website and let the neighbors know so everyone knows.
Right. If you have a preference, I will get those.
We are quasi-public officials and cannot accept gifts.
Oh, I just bring those in case there are passerbys who would like.
That's better.
Mr. Chairman, I have one other quick issue.
Read something into the record also, so.
We've had some confusion about the permit approval sequencing, And I've come up with a proposal that I've sent to all of you. I'd like to ask the board to recommend that we send it to the building department for comment at the next board meeting.
Certainly. I mean, just, you're asking just to send.
I'm
it
asking
on
permission to do that
Yeah,
from the
sure.
board members.
I think, by the way, the board members have been doing a lot of work, such as what we just heard, that Alan put this together, and it would be definitely an asset to send it on to the Board of Trustees.
So,
Okay, all in agreement?
yeah. Second. All
Good.
in favor?
Good.
Thank you.
Done.
All right.
Okay, so that's a recommendation of the Board of Trustees to consider the process. Okay.
I have another,
We have more items, you can't close
we
yet.
have several more. One planning board business item specifically. I'd like to move that we send a note to the Board of Trustees recommending that they approve a moratorium on building on
Adjacent to
the aqueduct through the Main Street, the downtown area.
From Cedar to the end,
To the end, yeah, I don't know what that would be.
someplace in the Bronx.
So,
Cedar to Maine, right?
Cedar to Main.
This is, the moratorium is really so that everyone can take a good look at what the requirements are and perhaps change some of the code issues. That's,
I make that motion anyway.
Second?
all those in favor? Good. So that's another item that's being passed on to the trustees.
Right, let's prepare a resolution for them to sign so they can send it on to the Board of Trustees.
And then I think there are two more.
Yeah, there's,
Maybe, Donna, can I?
I have a message here from the mayor on behalf of the board. A
Mayor
message.
who?
Mayor, come in.
That it might be
No, it
De
isn't.
Blasio.
There's only one mayor.
de Blasio. This is Dobbs Ferry, not the city of New York.
A message to Ed Plotkin from the mayor on behalf of the Board of Trustees. Dear Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the Board of Trustees and the Village of Dobbs Ferry, on the occasion of your final planning board meeting, thank you for your many years of service to the planning board as a regular member and as chairman. Volunteering once time to serve as an honorable way to give back to the community. As the current members of the planning board and other board members know, it takes a long, hard, and strong commitment of time and personal effort. To do as you have done for the planning board for 5 consecutive decades is truly amazing. You will be missed in many ways. Your experience, your personal skills, your knowledge of the village, and your humor, and yes, your bow tie too. But because of your example and leadership, the planning board is in great shape and will move forward smoothly to conduct the valuable work that its members do. Because of you, Dobbs Ferry is a better place. We wish you and your family all the best luck. Thank you. Sincerely, Mayor Hartley Cannett, on behalf of the Board of Trustees and the Village of Dobbs Ferry.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to hear your own eulogy. No, I really appreciate that. And it happens to be that when I went on the board, and that's a couple of years ago now, that I really didn't understand all of the details, and it was the members around me that kind of taught me which way to go. And it continues, and we learn. But yes, we all have a dedication to the village, and it's very much appreciated. I enjoyed this, so I'm doing it, I'm leaving really because I think that half a century is enough. And besides, the pension is fantastic. Thank you again.
Mr. Chairman, there's another resolution here. This is a resolution of the Planning Board of the Village of Dobbs Ferry celebrating and congratulating Edward S. Plotkin for 50 years of service as chairman. whereas 210 years ago, on what might have been a dark and stormy night, Edward S. Plockton was appointed chairman of the Village of Dobbs Ferry Planning Board, thus commencing a personal 50-year commitment to ensure that development would only enhance and not detract from the character and quality of life in the village. And whereas during his span of service, Chairman Plockton oversaw the development of 2 master plans, numerous large-scale residential development projects, downtown and waterfront revitalization efforts, and an untold number of site plan applications throughout the village. And whereas Chairman Plotkin was forever willing to take time away from his work as a professional engineer, specializing in large-scale rail and water tunnel projects, to carry out his responsibilities on the planning board and to make certain that issues were fully aired and decisions made based on what was best for the village under its ordinances. And whereas a lot of water has flowed over the dam or through the tunnel, as the case may be, since Chairman Plotkin took office. Whereas Chairman Plotkin fully fits the old adage, quote, "If you want something done, give it to a busy person," close. And whereas Chairman Plotkin's professionalism, humor, and sense of responsibility have come to be symbolized by a well-knotted bow tie. And whereas it's about time to finish these whereases and go ahead and thank Ed for his hard work and contributions to the village. Now therefore be it resolved, the planning board members herein provide a hearty and well-deserved thank you. And be it further resolved by the planning board that today, April 2, 2015, is herein declared Village of Dobbs Ferry Planning Board Bow Tie Day, all in Chairman Plotkin's honor. Be it further resolved that this resolution shall have an effective date in perpetuity. I make a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'm not seconding
All in favor?
Oh, we don't have a quorum. Oh, you will.
Do I have to sign this silly thing?
No, you don't have to say it.
Thank you, thank you. This is really, the word is surprise. But the biggest surprise was everyone being foolish enough to wear bow ties today, including Bob and that fool over there.
I think we should have a picture of the board and others together over there with our bow ties.
In front? Shall I jump it or go around?
I think this is a front page event right here.
Oh. This is entirely over. You went over.
Yeah, squeeze in. Ed should be in the center.
Ed should be in the center.
Oh, wait, hold on, I think. Turn sideways, like a prom picture. Usually I take a picture.
Dwight, you can stand in front of George.
Runs down.
Right. A little taller than George.
You gotta move it, Brian.
Actually, Marcus, why don't you slide into the back a little bit and then, okay, unless that works. You get him on the end.
This is like a wedding. No, it's like applying the
Brian, come back and stand in front of Marcus.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you could actually touch it.
Bow ties.
There we go. Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Perfect. I like this.
It's already on Facebook.
There you go.
One more. I don't know this camera. It says it's busy.
Oh, forget it.
What's
Forget it, he got it. I got it.
I think I
Someone
got
will
two.
come in.
Okay.
Come on, here we go, one more. Who's leading the picture?
Oh, I see what you're doing.
What am I doing?
Take it, that's great. It somehow has doubled the number of people. You've got less crime.
There we go. Anyway, I think I got.
Okay, thank you.
See what I did? I started doing a panorama.
Somehow did a panorama and added John Bryan,
Adjourn the
less
meeting.
crime.
Adjourn the meeting.
Ready for cake?
Where's the gavel?
No.
Check the pictures, I don't know how to do
Need the gavel.
I'm gonna look at
We
it
have to
first, I
adjourn the
deserve it.
They're trying to make a bow tie.
I think before we have the cake, we
Yeah.
have to get a legal opinion from Darius as to whether or not we can skip pre-submission and go right to subdivision.